evening. Welcome to the Ashland Planning Board meeting of Thursday, February 27th, 2020. We are in the Selectmen's Meeting Room in Town Hall, and we are being both recorded and broadcast on WACA cable access. We thank them for that. On our agenda tonight, we have the continued public hearing on 81 West Union Street Phase 2. This is the project that is next to and on the same property as the new storage building kind of in front of the middle school. So we're going to have significant discussion on that. We then are going to say goodnight to the television audience and have a relatively informal working session with the board, going over various zoning rules and regulations type things that we've been talking about doing, and try to work out some more specific plans of what we're going to bring forward for Springtown meeting and what our process in all of that is. One announcement I want to make here at the beginning. I want to remind people that tomorrow is the last day of early voting in Ashland, and the polls will be open in Town Hall from 8 a.m. to noon. And for anybody who hasn't early voted in the past, the way it works is they give you a regular ballot. You sign in like you regularly would. You mark your ballot like you normally mark your ballot. You then put your ballot into a sealed envelope, and that sealed envelope goes into a locked, basically vault, one for each precinct, and those are kept locked and secured. And then on the day of the election officials will feed those into the regular counting machines along with all the other ballots. So it's a safe, secure way of voting, and it saves you any issues with long lines during the election on Tuesday. And I know the election workers would appreciate it for anybody who can make it tomorrow. Again, that's from 8 a.m. to noon, even though Town Hall is normally closed at Town Hall in the basement. All right, so with that, we will now resume our public hearing on 81 West Union Street, and I will turn it over to the applicant to let us know what updates he has.
Okay, thank you. For the record, Peter Barbieri, attorney on behalf of the applicant. We talked, last time we were here, we talked to the board about the site plan and some potential changes to that and the nature of the depth of the spaces as well as the loading thing. So we've made those changes on this plan, and I'll go through those. We also had occasion to meet with the design review board, which is now, I guess, finished their hearing process, and you've got their recommendations, and we'll go through those as well. So we made site changes that we talked about with the board last time around, and we also made some site changes as a result of discussions with the design review board. So I'll focus on the design site changes first. The two easy ones that we talked about is that we made basically the spaces here and in here the 18 feet. And again, that's your typical standard, and I've got copies if you want them of Framingham, Natick, Colliston, 18 feet. We've kept the 24 feet of backup. And by doing the 8 feet of 3D spaces here, we were able to create a walkway through that. That design change, as well as the design change taking the loading area out of here, as we talked about the last time. Those were shown on the plan submitted to the design review group. From the viewpoint of the 18 feet parking spaces, I think they were in full agreement with that. They liked the concept of this landscape. And then the other thing that we did was, as you can see in the plan, we created crosswalks all the way through the site in a 5-foot concrete strip in front of the buildings as the crosswalk. So they were supportive of all those pedestrian improvements. So those were the kind of two big changes that we made. At the design review committee meeting, there was discussion from the viewpoint of the residential units that are there. and trying to create a little bit of separation and from the commercial space with that. The original plan we had kind of a different configuration of the parking spaces out here. We gave you the full footprints of the buildings, and we revised some of the layout of those spaces to match more up exactly with the garage doors and entry to those facilities. But the other thing we did is we took out one of the parking spaces, which was directly under the window in the living room for that residential area. That was a kind of comment from the designery group that you didn't want necessarily a parking space right under that window. That leaves us with 86 parking spaces, which is the requirement, so we haven't jeopardized compliance with the numbers of spaces. The other kind of site plan change that the design group talked about was before, both on this end of the building and that end of the building, the pavement kind of went within 5 feet of the property line. So we've added additional green space, kind of bringing it up to where the doors are, both to the residential unit here and then the exit unit over there. So we've added some green space along the back. And although the other comment was creating something in here, we don't necessarily on this, but as I said, we took out that parking space. There was discussion at the design review board from the viewpoint of having removable planters that we could put in there, and we don't show them on this plan, but we have no issues with that. So we've addressed from our point of view the comments that your peer consultant had, which was the conflict of having a loading area here. Again, we took that out. We have a loading area here and a loading area over there. The parking spaces we show back up out of here have the full 24 feet of backup before they come in presumably come in contract should a truck be there. So we meet all the backup standards and everything else. So from the viewpoint of site comments from your peer consultant, I think we've addressed his issues. I think that's generally it in the nature of the site changes. From the viewpoint of the changes of the building design and everything else, I'll talk about them briefly, but I think we showed the board the plans for building one. The rooftop element came as a result of comments from the design review group 2 meetings ago. They also had comments from the viewpoint of arching this in comparison to that. They had comments from the viewpoint of the style of the separation of the window panes. We've addressed that. They wanted more vertical than horizontal. And the other thing we did to address them was raise all the windows a little bit above the setup. So I think we've addressed the window frames and styles. We've made more of the windows all consistent throughout. And again, lifted them off the sidewalk.
And we also aligned the windows, so there was...
Yeah, straight up and down before they're offset, so we've aligned them as they wanted.
And when we adjust, so all of the windows on the second floor are the exact same size. All the windows on the third floor are the exact same size. All the windows on the second and the third are all the same width. There were some comments about that. All of the picture windows on the first floor are the same size, so that all of the grills are the same and have consistency and are very close to the grills in the windows above. That was mentioned on design review. The doors and the windows all align at the top so that there's this is facing the street. So now all the windows have rhyme and reason to them. This is just looking at from, this is as you're coming around, looking back toward 135. This is looking from the street as you're coming in. So now things do line up more. All of these windows are the same, so there's no changing in the grills. This is facing the terraces. So there's symmetry here, but in this unit here, we're trying to decrease the number of windows facing the neighbor because they're really not necessary. There's not a lot of space over there, but we wanted to have some type of symmetry in that view. And then this is the basement plan showing the support walls, whether they're open or what. This could be beams, it could be walls, depending on what the space. First floor plans, 2 means of egress from each unit, leading to 2 exits out of the building. Some of the units have actually the door that leads right from that unit to the outside. Well, actually, each unit does. When we wrapped a porch around, that gave us an exit here or an entrance. So everyone has an exit right outside. On the second floor, you have 4 units. Reason why windows are where they are, you can see that we try to get the sleeping rooms needed to have an emergency window. And this shows that you have 3 2-bedrooms and 1 studio, just because of where it is. And there's, in the hallways, every apartment has 2 doors that lead to a hallway with 2 exits down and out the building. 3rd floor is a mirror image of the 2nd floor.
So from the viewpoint of the design review comments, we've addressed all the alignment issues. We're in agreement with the fencing element matching the trim color within the building was one of their suggestions. We don't have any problem with that. In the signs, in the lighting on that, we're in agreement with. So the only thing, I guess to some extent, we have non-agreement with from a viewpoint of the design board group is the access into the basement. This plan does reflect a series of shrubs on both sides of the drive to screen that. It's tough to see, but you can see the little circles on both sides from the sidewalk to the building. It was certainly agreeable to do that. As we've talked about before, that is space for the tenants within the building. There's a great supply of residential apartments, as you know, in Ashland and other towns, and having ability to have storage space and access to storage space for those tenants, we think it would be a good amenity to help us make sure we rent those units. So we've properly screened that driveway access.
Why doesn't access at the other elevator side of the building provide that? There's a common hallway. Right.
Not any type of vehicular if people are trying to unload or load anything into their storage areas or to service the mechanicals that are gonna be in the basement as well.
And if people are gonna bring stuff in, like the elevators at the other far corner there, right? I just, like, I would concur with the design review, like, I understand you're gonna screen it, but that would be a nice patch of grass instead of a driveway. So, I mean, the basement is for tenant storage, we're not talking, commercial.
Nope.
It was dry good when it was all
Yeah,
more commercial.
and that's,
so
I think your consultant commented on that. There's no, per se, design standard in the viewpoint of slopes, but given the limited use of the thing, he didn't see any particular issues with it. So I think that's it in the nature of building 1. As to building 2, going through their residential, their comments, again, one of the things that they talked about was, again, creating more of a residential there. I think we did it in the nature of the architecture, same comments that go through from the viewpoint of alignment, particularly of these sets of windows here, which we've done, and shifted those a little bit. We also added a side door here as a second means, as well as the one in the back. And again, we've taken the parking space that was right underneath that window, we've taken that one out, and we're talking about, as I said, planters within this corner of the building to create something of a residential. So I think those were basically the comments from the Design Review Board, which we basically are in agreement or show plans that we've made those changes.
I confirmed the height of the garage. There was a question, I believe, at design review about could the garage doors be taller. These are already 8-foot tall doors. You can see that these are 6'8" doors here, so these are 8-foot doors. What I did do to try to bring balance to the height, I made the windows on the second floor taller to help bring them more in scale with the height of the building. That made a big difference. And then back to the alignment. These corner windows, originally I had them more into the corners, but to align the dormer windows with these windows, I moved them in, and that seemed to help the appearance and balance out this wall a little bit better as well. And the other thing was I reconfigured the kitchen because there was concern about this one window not aligning, so I swapped the sink and dishwasher so that this window now aligns with theirs, so there's some type of symmetry. So. And this is the commercial side of the building facing off into the woods, so. The printing is showing shadows, but you can see that, the totally has a different feel and appearance on this side of the building than it does on the other, which we had. And there's actually going to be green space here for the tenants, and we added green space as you come along to the fence. So they're actually those people will have a little bit of yard. And that's looking back from the other way. And this building is considerably lower than the original building. As I drove by West Union coming here tonight, I noticed that Mr. Ferris's house, I kept imagining it, everybody kept talking about the heights of the building. That's a tall 2-story home. That is not a little bitty Cape Cod house. So I think the heights are being somehow misrepresented from it. So I don't think this building is it's longer than his house, but it's not considerably higher if it is in height to his house.
So on building 3, we had a number of discussions with the design group from the viewpoint of the access to the residentials, discussions in the nature of the stairway, which leads on the left-hand side, which basically leads straight out from that building, and trying to talk about a switchback, which we're not capable of doing because of the garage door entry at that location. And we talked about handicapped accessibility in one of the units, and what you've got on the floor plans. You want to go to the floor plan?
This
Got a
door-
back doorway there.
This door leads to
And
an
then
elevator or a lift
there's a-
room
yeah.
for that residential unit.
Right. So that's all interior.
We'll talk about this staircase.
So there's a lift in here to provide the access to the residential unit on the second floor.
And it's in compliance with the ADA access board. I downloaded all of the information from there to make sure that we met all the requirements.
And as we have referenced to the board, anticipating all the mechanicals and everything in the roof structure, design review was right in the sense that our roof depictions don't identify those vents, but we'd have to install vents for the roof things, which if you want us to show those on a plan, we can. They're gonna be whatever code requires.
Like plumbing vents, you mean?
Huh?
Plumbing vents or other vents?
Yeah, mechanical vents, you know, the little pipes or whether we're doing louvers, you know, we haven't got to the level because they haven't sized necessarily any of the equipment yet. And I think generally, you know, certainly they had a comment from the viewpoint of the maintenance of the landscaping and the basins and all that stuff. That'll be part of your requirements. It's part of the Conservation Commission requirements. The other comment they made is that the wall before the wetlands, they wanted to see a brick on the top of it. In your package, there's a specifications of that wall. It's a masonry block wall, and there's a top masonry thing that it sits on top of that to make sure that the soils are stable and everything else. We wouldn't look to do brick, we'd continue with that masonry material. So I think that's where we are in the natures of changes that we have made or were requested to make, and certainly answer any questions you have.
Just one quick question. On building one,
Yeah.
if we look at the rendering, you can see a few places where the windows on the third floor are different from the windows on the second floor. And I think those are cases where there's stairways and such, as opposed to
Let's go back.
the apartments. Yeah, you can see right in the front where there's the two windows instead of the four windows, and then
Those?
yeah.
I think because this is 3D, you're not looking at it, you know, in perfect scale, no.
No, but you can see the third floor clearly has different windows on that little bump out, which on the plans, when you look at it, you
That-
see you see there's a stairway there.
Those.
Yeah.
All the windows are the same.
Well, I'm not saying the windows style is different. I'm just saying the third floor windows aren't quite the same as the second floor windows.
They are.
You mean in
I
position, in the way
In
quadruple.
position.
the
I-
interior?
You can see there's two pairs of windows, and then one
You're saying
pair
that-
right there. Yeah.
That does not match that.
No, I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining at all
Yep.
about it. But when you look at the floor layout for the third floor, it looks the same as the second floor and doesn't match
Oh,
the
this-
rendering.
This is not on the floor. This is in this.
Can you go to the floor plan?
These are elevated up. These are.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
No, I mean that's but the
Oh, I know what you're saying.
right. But when you go and look
Well,
at the
floor
plans for
plan,
the
yeah.
second floor, it shows all those windows.
Right.
And when you look at the plan for the third floor, it doesn't show the third floor window design. It shows the second floor window design.
You're,
That's what I'm getting at.
right. Yeah, I
And
see what you're saying now.
The only thing I want to point out is, from my perspective, the rendering is more, it takes precedence over the floor plans.
There's a
and if
reason
that is
why
not your
that's a
intention.
mistake. That's a mistake.
Yeah,
I
okay.
drew I mirror imaged
Yeah.
the second to the third floor and didn't change that window
Yeah.
on the floor plan.
Yeah, so what we want to be talking about is not what the floor plan says, but what the rendering
is
says in
correct,
that
yeah.
one case.
That's what you'll see.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
see what
so I
you're
just
saying.
wanted to, so in the event that you're doing and have to make changes, it'd be nice to
Yeah.
get that right.
I got you.
Okay. Yeah, it's a little thing, so,
Yeah.
and if
Thank you
if
for
for some
pointing that
reason,
out.
if we vote on this with the plans as they are, we'd put a stipulation in the
I
conditions.
got you.
Initial comments from other board members. Do we have the design? Yes, we do have the design review committee comments in our folder here.
Are there any details on the signs?
The site plan details?
Signs? There's-
Oh,
there's
signs.
a lot of signs on there, just like There's
Yeah,
any
we're just
drawings of
anticipating
that?
a block on that. We don't have any tenants, so we haven't designed what the
But I
sign
mean-
would be, but we're anticipating roughly, the largest would be 36 by 36.
But what, a lighted sign, a backlighted sign, plexiglass?
No backlight.
You know what
No.
I mean, that's what, have some kind of detail on.
This is an
Not who's on
overhang
the
here, so
sign,
you'd
but
have
what the
those
sign
lights,
is
and
gonna
there was
be lit
discussion of
outside.
whether there's a little sconce that would go over the light as
Yeah,
well.
cause I don't see that on there.
I imagine the sign's gonna be wood.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, just make sure they're not,
No, I think it was already stipulated they could be backlit.
yeah.
So they're gonna be like a wood sign, and there's gonna be lighting underneath all of the walkways. And we would probably go and match the lights that are on building two, that are on, if you can show the side of building two, probably just use the same light. On the residential side, you know? Those lights.
Yeah, goosenecks, right?
One of these here.
Who is gonna be looking at these plans as you go through the process for all manners of code compliance? As far as the number of bathrooms, the width of hallways, how the stairs operate, window heights, tempering, who's gonna be reviewing all those things? As far as,
Reviewing them, the building official will when we submit a building
well,
plan.
who's gonna be putting them in the drawings, so that you determine, say, how many bathrooms are needed, how many accessible bathrooms, that every door meets, ADA? Who's
Right,
gonna be?
the principal designer, when we apply for a building permit, will have to file all those plans. The building
principal
department will check
designer?
out,
Who's the- Who's the principal designer?
we haven't hired him yet.
Okay. So,
They
I'm
have to
just,
all be in compliance with, you know,
Yeah,
and if
so
you wanna
I'm-
put in the condition that we
Yeah,
have to comply with code, we have no issue with that.
yeah, everyone has to comply with code, that's usually a pretty good thing. So what I'm wondering is then, what is your process here? Like, so is there somebody else coming on board your team who is familiar with the codes for this type of building and then can apply those codes?
John has put these plans together.
I
If there are
understand.
refinements that have to take place, those will be done at the time of the building permit.
Yeah, I
you're
don't think
saying-
That
it's,
could change
You're
the
saying
whole
the
plan.
plans could change after we
Yeah.
approve?
The interior plans, absolutely.
yeah,
I
see,
mean, if somebody comes in and doesn't like the way the kitchen is laid out and the bedroom may change, yeah, I
Well,
mean,
then that would change the
zone-
windows on the outside too, right? That might change some of the
Yeah.
Well,
windows.
we wouldn't allow that to happen.
if it
You
changes,
can't
the
change
exterior, then they gotta deal with it. But interior changes, in your decisions from the viewpoint of the commercial space, suggest moving walls to consolidate units. I don't think that the zoning bylaw is control over what is happening inside the building. It's certainly outside appearance, and if that changes, you can include a condition that we have to come back for
Yeah,
that.
well, if the internal changes are the sort of things that somebody who owns the unit could do on a remodeling type project, then the fact that they're combining that with the original construction, you know, I can understand why you'd be a little disappointed that you're not building what the plans say, but at the same time, I can see why you'd say legally you're allowed to do that.
But also, it's a fair stipulation that you can't go changing the outside of the building.
Right.
It's also
Right.
a
So if
condominium,
it-
which you wouldn't
Yeah.
allow anyways. You wouldn't let people just, oh, I'm gonna put a different door and different windows in, because that's what you people approved.
which is what
In the town's decisions will be attachments to the master deed, and therefore everybody will know what they can or can't do.
which is my concern, right? This is my concern in the project. That right now, and I understand that a lot of work goes into learning this program, right? And I understand a lot of work goes in trying to understand a code book that is many volumes thick, right? And I would by no means say that I have that thing memorized, right? Like I said before, this type of building isn't what I do personally, right? But what I can see in these drawings is an unfamiliarity with the building code, right? So I'm wondering, when we get drawings that to the best, to a really good extent, I'm not gonna say the best of your knowledge, because that's probably not there yet, to get drawings that are very, very close to, or hopefully do meet all of those building codes, so that we can be sure that the outside of the building actually fits with an inside of the building that meets code. Okay?
Yeah,
And
I mean-
so, that's my question.
Yeah.
Right now, it's like, we can maneuver the outside of the building and the grounds as much as we want, but if we know the inside, it just isn't working, it's not to code yet, then we don't really know if the outside of the building is gonna have to change to make that happen.
I have,
So, I understand you're frustrated with the process, but this is the design process, which is
but
why,
it's not, I'm gonna wait until you finish.
I recommended from the beginning, getting an architect involved who understands the complexity of the building code. Because the building inspector cannot, he can't do this, that's not his job, to go and to redesign the building to meet code, right? So.
Absolutely.
So that's what, I mean, I understand that there's an effort to understand those, to understand accessibility, to understand egress, to understand room sizes and how residences work. That there's an effort here to do that, but it's just a lot more complicated than that. And there's a lot of things that are being missed. And I, for one, am very hesitant, especially on a special permit project, to put through something where the plan just isn't working, right? There's so many questions, it's incomplete. It's not usually, well, I mean, I have a very limited experience sitting on the planning board, but it's very limited relative to the buildings we have been seeing, which were much more ready to go forward. So this makes me nervous. This makes me very nervous when I see this many code issues that I do not think are being considered. And drawings that are being shown, they're just not quite correct in some ways. Like showing the third floor plan, say, of building 1, where the third floor is shown the same size as the second floor, but since the roof goes in, the third floor is gonna be a little bit smaller than the second floor, unless you're measuring at the floor level. Things like that. Like, I don't think the understanding of the building is there. It's looking better on the drawings. I think some of the things will be to your advantage, understanding the code. Like, for instance, on building 1, where you have that long hallway, like, I don't think you need that. I think your 2 means of egress are, because you have the 2 staircases, which is the first time we've seen them in a plan, right? But then the 2 staircases are located in a very odd position relative to each other, therefore making the units oddly shaped, right? With oddly shaped rooms, oddly shaped closets, things like that. It's a ripple effect. So usually you go back and forth between plan and elevation, plan and building form. What we have been doing is taking a footprint and saying, okay, now we have to change the program. We have to jam it in there, even though it doesn't really make sense anymore. These are my concerns. And I think it just reveals a project that isn't ready, a project that isn't fully understood. So I know that's not what you want to hear, but that's what I see. So they showed a lift up to I assume an accessible unit, but then seems, maybe I'm reading it wrong, but then seems to have a staircase up to a bedroom and a non-accessible bathroom on the first floor. I don't understand. What's that unit about?
Which unit are you talking about?
That would be
Building-
building 3, I think.
Building 3, the one that has the lofted bedroom, unless I'm misunderstanding what the term lofted bedroom. So I take a lift up to my living room, but I can't use the bathroom on my first floor because that's not accessible. And then I need a stair to go to my bedroom. So it's, the thought process just isn't complete. It's not rigorous. And this is a complex building. This isn't putting a little addition on a house. right? It's, you know, it's complex, these are complex building types, multi-use buildings. So,
I have been involved in permitting and development work for 35 years. Design review boards, the whole deal. Never have I designed a building with architectural plans for approval of a site plan. You don't spend hundreds of thousands of dollars for architectural reviews and designs for a site plan approval, or for that matter, a special permit. And the special permit is not interior to the buildings, it's the fact of whether the board wants to approve residential units in the buildings. Certainly a requirement that we have to comply with code, but you can't expect us to go out and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars without approvals. Approvals that can be challenged, codes could change, everything else. It's never done from the viewpoint of architectural plan submissions to a planning board as part of a site plan approval process. The board in design looks at the exterior of the buildings, and I haven't heard anything in the nature of problems with the exterior of the buildings. And certainly if code changes result on the interior to satisfy code, in the exterior, that exterior changes, the board has the right to make the determination of whether it's significant, and we have to come back, and we have no problem with doing that. But in 35 years, I've never discussed with a board the interior layout of a residential unit or commercial unit, for that matter, and the size of the bathrooms and handicapped accessible to the bathroom. That's the building code analysis, which is the next step. And certainly our obligation to submit to the building department architectural design plans and stamp plans that show compliance with the building code. And I understand your concerns, but that's not a concern for site plan approval. I don't see anything in your bylaw that says anything in the nature of the interior of a unit.
I think the nature of the planning board and the purview of the planning board is to make sure things go forward in Ashland that become an acceptable part of Ashland. You know, that we're making decisions. I think that's right. That's right on the planning board website. That has to do with things that are to the benefit of Ashland.
And we are showing access to every unit within there.
I'm not
Whether
talking
that
about-
lift becomes a larger size lift, interior, we'll have to do that.
And I also want to, in support of what Tricia's been saying, looking at these plans and looking at the plans we've approved for other apartment complexes in town, these feel less finished.
That may be the case. I don't know. I haven't been involved in the other plans.
Yeah, they've, I can look at things right here, like looking at building 1 for the living area on second and third floor. You've got this long hallway to provide the second access, but if for some reason you can't get to the first access, you can't get out from the second access either, because it goes.
I don't think.
And that may be an issue, but again, it's not a site plan issue. It's the interior of the building.
Yeah, it shows lack of thought.
It's a project issue. It's a project issue.
It's not a project issue. It's not a zoning issue. It's not a site plan issue. It's an interior design issue that we have to appropriately address. If we want rectangular rooms, we could put in rectangular rooms. You can't tell us you don't like the shape of a room on the inside of a building. That's not zoning.
I don't think anybody's saying you don't like the shape of the room.
I heard shape of the room
There's definitely things.
in corridor.
I'm not saying shape of the room.
Right.
Well, I think that the board's giving you feedback.
I think our concern is that we want to see plans that look realistic.
I would ask
And
that you confirm the acceptance of the exterior plans. And if you want us to submit interior plans when they're finished, we don't have no problem submitting them to you. And at the time we submit it, when they're finished, and we submit it to the building official. But your concern should be that exterior appearance. That's what you say relationship to others and other lots. So should we go look in the residential unit next door and see what the shape of his things and where his bathroom is and what access is it? No, you're not comparing interiors of buildings as part of a zoning analysis.
So to the extent you go and you apply the zoning, and you have to make changes interior that force a change to the exterior.
Then we
Now,
need to,
where
we need
are
to come back and amend your approval.
Yeah, but I think what we're saying is that I think there's a feeling amongst people who are closest to this stuff on the board that there's a heightened level of concern around this based on where the drawings are.
I'm not disputing your level of concern, and it's something we will have to address if it turns out to be the case. But again, focusing on the exterior of the buildings, I think we've done what we were requested to do.
I could certainly go and comment about all of the exterior appearance of the building. Do I think they're there yet? Absolutely not, right? I think it continues to make progress, but to me, it all reveals a lack of experience and a lack of understanding about how the pieces go together. The same thing with true, if everyone in their wheelhouse, in their profession, right? If I went out to the site, somehow got into an excavator and dug a hole, you'd be able to see right now that I had never done it before in my life, right? It would be completely apparent, right? That's what this is to me. It's very apparent that the expertise to put this thing together is not there. And I am concerned about how the outside and inside go together. It's not one or two things. It's a lot of things. I am worried about this project. I guess we can be.
Give us some more color about those things. Like, give us some examples for like some people who are laymen here.
I mean, this can't be a constantly evolving exterior of the building. It just can't be.
It can be. It absolutely can be.
It can't be. You guys
We
are gonna make a decision,
we
and then
spent
we move on.
we
If the
spent-
decision's negative, then that's
Then
what's
the-
up.
the
Because
decision-
You know what? We have worked tirelessly on this, and to be quite honest with you, I've worked with John for 28 years, okay? I've done $2 million buildings in Weston with him, where he did all the design work. I'm talking structural beams, high vaulted ceilings, and he's a finished carpenter, okay? So is he running this computer program not as good as you can? That's probably true. But I've also been put into a situation where I was 2 weeks away from permits, and all of a sudden told, hey, add residential into this. Okay, all right, fine. And we added residential into it. So it can't be that all of a sudden we're gonna completely redo. We did everything everybody asked us to do. Go back to design review. By the way, design review approved every single one of these buildings last time.
I know they
All
did.
done. We went back through design review again, at the request of the board, no problem. And we got all of our issues straightened out except for one, which is the drive under. So what's the process? Then we come here and then we have to jump through other hoops? That doesn't seem fair if you people are asking us to go to a design review meeting to get these things vetted, and then we go there, we get them vetted, and then we come back and we vet them again?
Those are the bylaws.
I understand it's
Those are
the
the
bylaws,
bylaws
but
that's telling, that's
Well,
the
but the
plans.
thing is, it's unreasonable because, first of all, it's not realistic for us to walk around. You said you want an interior. Okay, fine, we put the interiors together. But it's not realistic for us to be discussing how the interior works with the exterior when I file for a building permit, if I don't have it approved, we're gonna have construction control. So if I don't have, they're in excess of 35,000 cubic feet, right? So it's gonna be controlled by an architect, right?
But that,
So that means it's all gonna be controlled construction, which means the plans have to be approved. And Pete is stipulating that if we change anything on the exterior, I understand you guys are buying the exterior. If I change the exterior, I'm in trouble. I gotta come back to you guys and say, Pete, I gotta come back in. We made a mistake. I gotta pay for it. I gotta pay fees. I gotta wait. I can't do anything. But I have to, get the project moving or go a different direction because I can't just keep changing things. It's unrealistic.
I think the thing that you said, that you wanted us to put an interior in, so we put an interior in, says it to me right there. That,
We already had the interiors laid out. So we put in those commercial spaces. We don't know who's gonna go in there. Might be one person. One person might take the whole floor. Okay, so we gave interiors. Most important was the signs, which we were supposed to have a sign detail, okay? I don't know why we didn't have it here. We will get you one. It's a wooden sign. I'll get you the light. And we provided breakup in the area on the first floor, because I don't know who's gonna go in there. So what if it's all one big open thing, and then I show you this, then what's gonna happen later? Oh, you said it was gonna be 4 rooms, with hallways here. And then, we gave a good indication of what we were thinking on the second and third floor, But what happens if it turns out there's someone that wants a 4-bedroom? Or someone that wants a 2-bedroom? Then what do? I have to change the interior. But just like in any condominium, that's the case, that can be true. But it doesn't mean that I'm gonna change the windows.
Are you custom building these units? I thought you were, you know, you gave us layout, you're gonna build the plans to that. Are you talking commercial or residential? Sorry.
I'm talking residential.
Okay, so,
In the commercial application, it's like, per your suggestion, it needs, well, someone said this, I don't know if it was you.
It was me.
About adjoining, you know, if there's not a wall, then that could be 2 units, or that could be 3 units. That's flexible. As far as the residential units go, we are showing you a bedroom count. But it doesn't mean that we couldn't have a different layout.
Excuse me, but you're showing a unit count, not a
Yes,
bedroom.
yes.
A
I'm
unit
sorry. Well, in unit counts, I think we're showing you how many bedrooms there are in each unit.
Yes, but I think the
Right.
overall thing is a unit count.
I'm
This
sorry,
application,
10
this application has a unit count, not a
Correct.
bedroom count,
12.
for clarification.
So whether there's 3 units in this one and 2 in that one, or this is a studio, I assumed we had the ability to change that. But I thought that you folks were looking for, like, what are you doing on the inside? What's going on? Because we were trying to be respectful of your earlier comments, which were, how is this plan working? And now we're trying to evolve the plans, and I feel like we're like moving the goalposts around now. Oh, now we're gonna go back to the outside, because you're not happy with the outside. And I don't mind thoughtful consideration. That's why we went to the design board. We went through all this stuff. But to have it be that we're gonna take the goalposts and then just take it off the field, that's not gonna work.
I think that's the hard part is that it's that the design process is not understood. The relationship between the site, the interior, and the exterior is not understood. And whether you've done a bunch of projects like this where they just wanted the footprint and you'd fill it in later, it probably depends on what kind of a building it is. Maybe the first ones, when they were all just contractor units, it probably would have been, that's a different story than residences, right? You're asking,
We're asking approval of that architecture under the design criteria in your zoning bylaw, which doesn't say anything about shapes of windows, sizes of windows, alignment of windows, or anything else for that matter. It says, an appearance compatible, and we think we've created that over the last 3 months. We've done everything to make it compatible that we've been asked to do. We've changed the materials, we've changed everything at significant cost, and we're asking you to approve this architecture with the condition that if it changes, same thing, if we change any condition on the site layout, we've got to come back to you and get approval.
So this, what we're approving is the amount of units, the layout, the exterior, right? So
Yes,
if
everything in the
If
project.
they move the kitchen from one side to the other, that's really not what we're talking about, right?
Everything in the project is what we're approving. And
So even the floor plan?
yes, the floor plan is part of
Okay.
the decision.
You're not
all-
approving floor plans.
Excuse me.
You're approving 12 units.
Excuse me,
can we talk about?
let him finish.
We are approving all items from the outside, from the site plan, from the civil site plan, to the architecture of the building, to the renderings. All items that are submitted by the applicant are worked within our decision, and itemized within the decision.
Well, you've got to make that decision, and we're going to court, because you have no authority to control the interior layout of a building, given a fact. And if you want to discuss that with town council, we'd be happy to do it with you. Your focus is on that site plan that's depicted there, the buildings that are depicted there, that architecture. What we do inside, with the exception of the uses that you identify within the building, and the nature of general services in 8 units in Building 1, in 2 units in Building 2, in 2 units in Building 3, that we have to live with. But beyond that, that's not your purview.
Unless it changes the outside of the buildings, right?
But that
So-
said, is
I know, but I'm just
Just to
saying
move
that.
on from this comment, I think we'll get town council, and if we need council at the next planning board meeting, we'll get town council at the next planning board meeting. I think
And-
that's the short.
Because, I mean, if we were
Sure,
approving
and
this,
then
it
all.
shows kitchen, but it doesn't show any layout, just like it's in a big room with a kitchen, so there's really,
And the one thing I'm hearing about this that concerns me is we typically do specify in a decision number of bedrooms.
Correct.
In,
I think we are though, right?
Yeah.
So we have
well,
no
there was-
problem with
there
that.
was
Again,
some
if it changes, we gotta
conversation
come
that
back.
that saying you could change the number of
So you need
bedrooms.
4 bedrooms or
And
something, yeah.
typically,
come back.
typically we specify,
No.
you know, if you, we don't look at too much detail for the layout inside an apartment, but we do look at how many bedrooms it is. And when we did the big Cirrus apartments, you know, we looked very carefully, are they putting a closet
Yeah, because
where some other room could
that's a
be
legitimate one,
used
because
as
all
a
they come
bedroom,
before
even though
bedrooms,
it's
now you
not.
get kids and everything else. We have no issues with the unit count in bedroom count.
Okay.
And I have no issue with improving the floor plans either, to your point. But I mean, I don't wanna be involved in a process that's just gonna keep, everything's just gonna keep moving around.
Yeah, and
This is just why I suggest, I believe it the first time I saw this project after, you know, after the
Came
function
back,
changed,
yeah.
right, when it came back, was I think one of the first things I said is that you have to get a registered architect on this project.
I don't believe we need one.
Then
Right.
we'll have to go to town council.
That's fine. Go to town council.
Again, you wanna have a discussion with council, I don't think you have the right to tell us, we gotta provide you architecturally designed interior
I'm
plans.
saying if I look at this and there were no issues with, I know plenty of architectural designers
Yeah.
who are not registered architects, who can design a building to code, right? And I have no problem with that. But I'm like, I've said it before.
I
this-
understand what you're saying.
this
The only thing I
worries
can say to
me.
you, there were code requirements and everything else that we're gonna have to comply with, and we've agreed that we come back to you if that appearance changes.
Can I ask
So I understand your concern, but I think it's appropriately addressed by conditions in
a
the.
question, just like, because we've not come across this before? So, say we get to this point, and then you guys do in fact have to come back, and you can imagine there's gonna be a higher level of scrutiny when you come back for changes that Tricia maybe anticipated, if that were the case. If we get to that point and we come back, and we are not willing to change any of your, or to concede to any of the things you need done, because you don't need the code, then what happens with your project that's at that
We
point?
have to live with that design.
Yeah, it reverts back to what was previously approved.
Okay. Even if
But if they couldn't
can't make
do
it work
that-
on the interior, they're gonna have to just,
Yeah, I think we're boxing ourselves into a never-ending, you know,
yeah, let's
loop.
let's find a way to move forward and make some progress tonight. I think we've
Okay.
hit this conversation as far as we can hit it. I think we've got if we break this down into the different areas of the project, and we can figure out where we are and, you know, what areas still need work, what areas we're happy with. The first thing is, let's hit the design review comments. I believe we have a member of the design review committee here. Is that, are you? I'm sorry, can you come to the microphone just so people at home can hear you? Are you here to represent the design review committee?
No, I was actually here about something else
Oh, okay.
that's going on.
Okay.
I mean, we made our comments and we've submitted them. The only real issue we had was that dock me on the front of the building. Well, loading dock, this thing. Whatever, the driveway.
Okay.
So that really concerned us, and what we asked about was adding to the density of the plantings out there. Maybe changing it up to
okay.
shrubbery instead of lawn. And the other thing, which I think they've done, but we're really, I think we're all sort of surprised by the covenant thing. And so putting, you know, this building, they've spent a lot of time working on and making it look really good for residential. We like what they've done. When we start putting residential in these buildings, they're like in an ocean of blacktop. And so you've got people trying to live in a building like this. There's no place to put the grill outside or do any of that other stuff. And it's just sort of really odd. I'm gonna leave it at that. I think that's what we all thought. So they agreed to put some planters in and, you know, add some barrier lattice, if you will, or some kind of screening between where the commercial park and garage openings are and the residential areas are, just to sort of say say, no, you can't park a big truck in front of somebody's kitchen window. So, you know, that's pretty much where we're at. This we're most concerned about because of where it is on the street and what you're gonna see. It's the thing you see the most. Everything else seems to be pretty well screened and it's dropped down in elevation.
Yeah, and I think Joe brought up the issue that, you know, why is it there? You know, versus.
That's almost verbatim what one of the other guys said.
Yeah, so, you know, so that's an issue that, you know, it's a site plan issue that was brought up, and it's like, nope, we're not changing it. With the issue of that back stair just kind of being this bridge thing out,
The issue
it's
that-
been brought up again and again. This isn't, you know, just a general comment that Joe keeps saying, and that why do we have this egress, the stair in the back, that, no, we can't change it because it goes in front of a garage door. Well, figure it out a way to change it, you know?
The issue that we have the most of is getting in and getting out, and you're gonna drive down here, then how are you turning around? Are you going in the building to turn around? Or
Yeah,
are you backing
Kathy,
back out?
yeah, Kathy, I agree, like, I mean, I struggle with the driveway, I understand that they didn't wanna change it based on design review, but like, I think
That
it,
was our big
yeah.
comment.
That you wanted to
it-
change it.
Yeah, that was part of our discussion, because we just can't figure that out, we can't figure out what's gonna happen here. When somebody, I mean, I live on a busy street, this is even busier and more crazy, and if people are tearing in and out of here, which, you know, they do, I mean, I see it happening on my street all the time. Nobody stops to actually make a turn to go up the hill, they just turn. And so, it's only in heavy traffic that they don't, so it could just be a nightmare little bottleneck area. And you already have an elevator and you already have stairs, and theoretically, you have a way for people to get stuff in a building up and down. And you do that if you're a contractor. Well, I'm a contractor, my husband's a contractor, that's what you do. You might not like it, but you don't necessarily have the ability to get into a building this way, because you just don't. So that was what our concern was, but if this is gonna stay, we really wanted this a lot more screened than just a little row or 2 rows. We want it to be more dense. And I offered to help Mr. Rodenheiser, because he did some really nice stuff for us at the town forest, and I said, I can give them some advice and show them what to do and give them some plant advice. So,
Thank you.
my piece on this, but I do have some comments about another project.
okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, so let's look at, let's look at that little driveway thing there. So you, can you explain again exactly what, because I look at the rendering for this side of the building, and I don't see anything that shows why there's this driveway here.
Well, you wouldn't, because the rendering takes you, like on that one, it takes you from the base of the building up. That is a sunken area, and the roadway is down, I think, at 246. That is up to 248, so it's all looking across and down. You wouldn't depict that
Well,
on a rendering, because it's
yeah.
a hole. It's
There
not
was-
anything that's sticking up to block the building.
there was an ask for some perspective drawings at the last meeting, I think. Are these, have I missed them in this package?
Yeah, we submitted some perspective.
Well, and
It was supposed to show relative to the
yeah,
existing
I
buildings,
don't
but it
see
doesn't.
anything that shows any of the landscaping with the building. I don't see anything that shows any of the neighboring buildings. So I don't, if you had shown a rendering that showed that little driveway in there, it would be very clear what we're getting. Right now, the only picture that we have that shows that driveway is the top-down site plan.
I don't know what we would show you. If you put a cross-section, all you're gonna do is a cross-section, you're gonna say, oh, you're gonna drop down, you're gonna go over, you're gonna come back up.
No, I'm saying, you should be able.
You're telling us we're not getting the driveway, but
In
They could show it
theory,
going in
you
Yeah.
say,
down here,
if I were
right?
standing right
Yeah.
here, what would I see? And it would show.
You'd see a driveway going down.
Yeah.
going
So it goes
down.
down to the basement,
But I
right?
can see something that shows
Oh,
the
wait.
driveway,
Goes
shows
down
the
to the
building,
basement
shows
floor.
the landscaping you're putting
So,
in.
so this is literally like if you're standing at the bottom of that driveway, there's 6 feet of wall next to you to grade.
It's this point,
Yeah,
it's basically at grade.
it goes
As you go
down.
It goes
yeah.
to 4.5
No,
or 5.
there's with all due respect, if that's for tenant basement storage, we're gonna have a sunken driveway right in front of the building.
Mhm.
that doesn't seem consistent. When there's an elevator and a stair on the other end, no way.
I mean, there's nothing in your zoning bylaw that says you can't do it.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that, but that doesn't make it. It's horrible. Right in front on the street.
This is not by right. None of
Yeah,
this is by right.
I mean, yeah, there may be nothing, but it's a special permit. So.
One of the depictions we gave you, and again, it's tough to see, but there it is, right there, it's the whole
Yeah,
going down.
that was.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah, I haven't
I
either.
haven't seen it.
Emma's going to print them out.
Oh, okay.
I haven't seen them. I think they came in when I was out last week.
Look more like.
So they didn't get the drawings we sent them?
Not,
Th-
these.
Not
this
that
set
one.
Not those.
Has not been
Well, you
distributed
sent
to the
them you,
board.
right?
I have
Yeah.
not.
Right.
The office did receive
Right.
them. I have not looked at them yet. I have
The-
not had time.
This, oh, yes, when I talked about having a camera there, this is what you'd see, and this is, yeah, this is, yes. This,
With the houses next door, yeah.
yeah, this is,
Something we need.
yeah.
What about that other access to the basement for residential storage down there with an elevator and that far side? Like, what doesn't work for residential? Like, you don't want people storing. You're not gonna let people
There'll
store
be
1,000 pounds of
containers.
equipment down there or anything else. Like, this is residential storage. That
Well,
doesn't
I mean,
make.
yeah, I mean, you're gonna have the typical conditions in the nature of the storage as you do with the residential.
I mean, that's
Yeah,
your
so I
that's
have
your
this
condo
right
agreement. So
there. There's
again,
one vehicle
that-
and-
yeah, that's your business. But I'm just saying, like,
Could do without the
practically.
driveway.
But there will also be some of the building mechanicals under there that somebody servicing those will get. I mean, you're talking about the fact that the car will basically be right there. You know, you're backing up 8 feet.
Yeah, the biggest problem with that is this is also the right in front of 135 where everybody is looking. And it's the one part of the building
Well, again,
that we
we'll
really,
certainly
really
work
want to
come
look
up with
good.
significant landscaping.
Um, Apart from that, looking at the overall site plan, you know, with the parking situation and such, do we have any issues or concerns? I think it's been, apart from that, I think it's been pretty well
So
addressed.
the 18-foot spaces.
I'm
all
happy,
work. I think it
I'm
works.
happy with that.
I do too, I think that works.
Just
It's all positive.
just as a follow-up, I know at the last meeting we talked about this. At 128 Main Street, the parking spaces are 9 by 18. At 21 Main Street, they're 8 by 16. Then at 12 Pond, they're 9 by 20.
I think they're not.
So
that's
that was
10
on the
by-
approved site plans.
So these are what, 9 by 18 or
9 by
10?
18.
Okay. That's not an
With
issue.
24 feet back up behind.
Yeah, that's not an issue. I think it's a positive. We added some.
That's this other space. Where's the middle school?
Okay, so I'm not hearing anything from the board with,
I think the stair and that stair that we keep commenting on, the very long stair right here.
yeah.
That in the winter has to be shoveled, that's, it needs to be addressed. It can't just be said, oh, we just can't fit it, it's in the way of the garage door, you just can't do it. Do it.
What-
Make it
what-
work.
What's your suggestion? What do you want us to do?
It can be a switchback, it can be, it's this tiny little bridge going to access these
All right,
units.
so maybe
Yeah.
a switchback would be,
So, it's been
Right.
said since day one, like, make it something a lot better, not
this is at
something,
the back of building 3?
yeah, is
Yeah.
that the only,
Yeah.
that's the
That's the
way
only
they're
one
in
that
now,
has that.
right?
Actually,
Well,
one,
they said they couldn't do the switchback because the access underneath and
Yeah.
the retaining wall and all that, but maybe,
Look at changing that.
yeah,
well, I
one,
mean, if it went behind the building, if it was all behind the building.
one,
Well,
one,
we
I don't think
kept
it
it to
But you've got a
meet
walkway
the
there or something
setback
you can't do.
Without a structure being,
Yeah.
you know, for the
Well, and that's the
proposed
thing about the setback. I mean, if you wanna talk about site plan, let's talk about site plan. I keep asking, can we be a little kinder to that setback line? You know, can we be a little kinder? But the answer is always no, can't do it, cannot do it, no way, no how. Yet, we're supposed to be, you know, what are you talking about? Why aren't this is perfect, why can't we go on with this, right? I'm looking for a little give here.
Well, we're gonna
You
look
know?
at the switchback, but the
that-
buildings meet the setback.
Well, is that,
I'm not
Garage?
talking, I'm not talking about what it gives. No, you
Yeah.
said right away when you showed these that I went through this process before and this was approved before and this is what it is. That's what you said.
Right, so
Right?
what, because we're in a new process where I have to add residential, and
Absolutely.
it's a special permit, I'm supposed to go 30 feet off the lot line?
I think,
That's not true.
I think it could be a little nicer. It's
Right,
not
but
true
You
that
also have the right to deny it,
that's right.
and then I have rights, and that's fine.
Yes,
And
we
if
do,
that's-
Bill,
all
but
right,
let's not
But
get,
the thing is, if we're gonna do
Bill,
that,
if you're
that's
gonna
what this is
speak,
about.
A, you have to get to the
You agreed
microphone.
that this was gonna be a process that we were gonna work through, okay?
Look,
And it-
look,
Yeah,
if you're gonna speak, please come to the microphone.
sure. I met with town council 3 times, went through this entire process of what you wanted, okay? What you guys thought would be a good idea and what we could present to the board. I come in here the first time with all due respect, and unfortunately, she's been given absolutely no information. Tonight, again, I come in here, and you've been pressing us to get you these plans, we've been working. They want the perspectives, you don't even give them the perspectives. The most important thing about being able to look at the site, we gave them to you, and you didn't give them to them.
Excuse me, Bill.
I meet with you and town council, no, excuse me, I'm speaking 3 times.
no,
I meet with you 3 times, and then after meeting with you 3 times, where we talk about adding residential and how we should work with the town to try to make this, you know, a better project, okay? I come in here, and now what do you wanna do? Nobody was informed of everything that went on, because there's a covenant and a special permit that I am still have the right to challenge the authenticity of. Now what? Now, all of a sudden, because I'm in a special permit process, I'm gonna like take the buildings and put them 20 feet off the lot line? And I'm not trying to be disrespectful to you, honestly. You've had some really good suggestions, and the things about the interior, we'll fix them. I'll deal with them. But I can't, and I'll fix the stair in the back. But taking the building all of a sudden and moving it 20 feet off the lot line, I can't physically, financially do it right now. There's an easier alternative for me at that point.
No,
And I don't want to fight with you, and I want to do something to make this better for you and for the town, but the fact is, that stairway is like in the back of the building, nobody's ever gonna see it. Now, it's a function of being told, add, residential units into this project. And it was discussed also that perhaps we shouldn't put residential units in the back. That's something that actually you brought up to us at a meeting that we had with Pete and I. So I thought, well, maybe the board would consider that. It hasn't been brought up for consideration, so I wasn't wanting to say to you, hey, can you take the residential out of it, because it's a requirement. And then for me to be going through this entire process, and then only to find out that while I'm going through the process, the town is having a meeting, and having a town meeting to change the zoning exactly relative to my site? I mean, how do you think I feel about that?
I don't think, I'm not sure what you're talking about with that, but nothing has to do with every project, I would say, that comes up. 12 Pond Street, I mean, I've only been here less than a year. But with every project that comes up, it's like, oh, well, that's not working. We should make sure it does in the future. You know, though, that's learning. That's just learning and improving your bylaws. That's not like, oh, we need to direct this at this guy. You know,
I know, but
that's
think
not what
about
it's
it.
about.
Isn't it ironic, though, that I'm in a position negotiating with Peter about how to make this project work, and then all of a sudden, there's a change that's going in front of the town to change the zoning that directly affects my property? Isn't that that's kind of a little ironic, isn't it? And then
The reason for that change, with all due
Yeah.
respect, is because of that storage building.
Yeah, sure.
And you know something? I understand. But then again, how do you think I feel? I came here in front of this board in 2017. I put everything on the table. I said, look, this is what I'm doing here. I didn't hide anything. I just said, this is what we're doing. And then people are accusing or making statements that they think that I knew that this covenant existed. If I thought that I knew that this covenant existed, why would I be doing this? Why would I have come in 2017?
Let's get back, to the site plan.
I think we need to look at, the site plan, and I'm not gonna comment on anything, but, I will save my comments until I talk to council.
That's fine.
All right.
Thank you.
So, one thought that I had, just total crazy idea, I don't know if this is practical at all. If the, so you put in a lift for ADA compliance reasons for one of the 4 units in the, buildings 2 and 3, because that, or is that,
All the units in that are
Or-
fully compliant.
are all the units?
One of the units in building 3 is fully.
Oh, one of the units in building 3,
One of the
okay.
ones
One inspector said we had to put in a.
Okay, so that's,
Who said that?
and you're doing that.
Building
11
inspector?
out of the 12 units will.
Okay, and that's because that's what the building code requires, I assume.
In each building, you need one.
Okay, so one thought that I had is if you switched which one was compliant on building 3, then that long staircase would at least, I mean, I real,
A long,
you'd probably still need it, but it would no longer be their primary access would be the lift, presumably.
well, that's on the other, the handicapped access unit is on this side.
Right, but I'm saying if you switched them, then at least the long staircase would not be something the person is typically using all the
Did the
time.
building officials still want a second beyond the lift?
What did the building inspector say?
But
have to be ADA compliant, or?
If we put a lift there,
oh, would that mean the staircase
what
has to be
stair-
ADA compliant also because of?
we still need a second set of stairs to get up to the.
No, I'm not saying you'd get rid of the stairs, but I'm saying at least they wouldn't be, I don't know. I don't know if that helps at all.
Let us look at the switchback and.
Yeah,
see what we can do.
Can I
and,
speak to the switchback, because there's, it's.
can you come to the podium? The people at home can't hear you.
So,
Which, oh, wait, the question is if we can move the elevator over, then it kind of like takes care of the issue of the switchback and.
Or maybe it doesn't.
doesn't
I
have
don't know.
anything to do with, I met with, Mike Christofello. I'm horrible with some of these names, and I spoke to him about egresses and stuff like that, and I even have copies of my discussion where I emailed him back based on what our discussions were, and he was in full agreement with my interpretation of what he told me. But as far as the stairs and the switchback, I tried drawing it, but to try and add a landing, now it's not just as easy to say switchback, because now you have to make a bigger landing and you're turning and you're going back another way. And I'm drawing the stairs to commercial code, not residential code. If we were allowed, since it's a residential unit, to do it to residential code, which is different than commercial code for stairs, then there could be more room. So, but there is another practical reason that we're neglecting to look at. The parking for that unit is not up against the building. If you put the switchback, I would argue, in my opinion, that making it switchback actually takes that person back away from their parking, and it's a straighter shot. They're not, then you're asking that person to be more involved in what's going on the commercial world, where if the stair going straight, it introduces them at a better angle to their parking, and it also actually is easier to having to worry about a switchback going back and forth. As far as snow, the inspector said we have 2 options. We have to build the stairs out of steel that have open treads that the snow can fall through, or they have to be covered, and if they're covered, then you have to have sprinkler systems. Okay, so as you know, there's other things that you do in a design that's just like, there's a lot of things you would love to do, but you also have budgets that you have to deal with, and you have to make choices sometimes over form, over function, over finance. And so I would argue that you get no value by switchbacking the stairs, and I'd hate to see a project be determined by a switchback stair. It just doesn't make any sense when there sometimes isn't a right answer, and neither one are wrong. It's just a preference, and if there's one thing I've learned in my 28 years up here and experience, if you ask 100 people, you're gonna get 100 answers, and it is about making the customer happy, right? I mean, right now, you are our customer, right? So we have worked hard trying to think of form over function. I would love to push those dormers back. Everything tells me you're right. Those dormers should put back. But when I pushed them back, and now I'm looking at the butt end of the other dormers to make the mezzanine and the other work, I just made it worse. And so there's reasons. I just didn't throw these things together. You know, I'm trying to take into consideration my customer and you and your opinions and try to make those work. You know, so, and we know we have to have an architect or an engineer. We have to have a control over the building. We have to have a code analysis to make sure we're meeting code. And I'm not ignorant of the commercial code. I have studied it. I have asked questions to the appropriate people. I have made sure that my understandings of the code, as far as ADA, that there will be ADA compliant bathrooms, hallways, accesses, and there's also interpretation differences in the code when it comes to number of egresses. But when you dig deep into the code, there's exceptions and there's other rules that apply to different buildings. Building 2 and Building 3 have different rules when it comes to egress out of residential units than Building 1. And so I could argue the fact by reading the code, and I have the data to back it up, that I don't technically have to have 2 doors out of those units because of what the code says. But those are not arguments for here. Those are arguments with the code official at town and the code review, and those things will get worked out. The most important thing is to try to make a building that is on the outside the most appealing that we can make it. So we're having to design a building from the outside to make it appealing and then adapt the inside to it. So it's not fair to just, say certain things when those things have been considered, but they will be improved upon, because now we have to go and get a design and then we have to make everything else work. But that's not the preview of what I understood this board to be. We're trying to get an appealing building, and I've read through the 70-page. I didn't come into this blind, okay? I'm trying to make little changes, and I've and done the best that we can. But I think, there's 2 ways to look at things, and if the inspector says, no, John, you can do a residential stair on there, it doesn't have to be 4 foot between the rails, that changes things. If I can do 9.5-inch runs instead of 12-inch or 11-inch runs, that stair just got 8 feet shorter. So there's all kinds of things that can be done. So, and those are things that my understanding is that, that's not going to change the look as much of the stair. It's only going to improve the length of it. So that's my input to it.
I actually appreciate that. I appreciate that kind of detail, that you can talk about it with that kind of detail. So that's great, because it's complicated. And you are correct. There are, in Building 1, you don't need those 2 doors. As far as I know, it's a different kind of code than
Right.
2 and 3. Those are different, right? And it takes some in-depth look at those things.
Right.
The one thing I continue to agree on is that making a building, like making a pretty building now and trying to stuff a plan into it, that just doesn't, it just doesn't work that way. You know, there'll need to be changes. I wish it would have gone where you thought about these two things together, because that's when you get the best results. When you think about the site and the inside and the outside together, that's what makes a project work. That's what kind of gets, you know, where it's smooth, because, oh, it all works together. Versus like, boy, these things don't even make sense next to each other. That's the one point of disagreement I have with what you were saying.
And I appreciate that, and I understand it, but looking at it from our point of view, I argue that we have done that. That we knew what kind of units we wanted in, and we knew arrangements, and we're like, well, if he interprets it this way, that way, but we're like, let's get the outside, and we have comments from design review. Well, I want more dormers across the front. I want less dormers across the front. So how am I supposed, now I'm being, you know, so okay, all right, I can adapt the inside to that. May not look the same, but so we are being asked to design it from the outside in. When well, why do you have to put those dormers? Why couldn't you put more? I want more glass. I want more dormers. I want this. I want that.
But I mean, I think the thing is, now we're kind of getting closer to the point of what the inside has to be. And I understand you want more. So, okay, we're not going to obviously settle this tonight. So we have to go back and do better on the inside, and we will. If that's what we have to do, we will.
And it's actually to the benefit. I mean, I know that the dollar sign, obviously it's maybe not, the going through this process isn't benefiting that, but an understanding of how the inside works, because there's no way, if you started on the inside of building one, that you would have got that floor plan. No way. You know, so but if you work the two together and let the outside of the building start to change relative to the better inside of the building, you're gonna have a better product in the end. That's what
But I don't think we wanted to change the outside of the building. We did building one in sort of a manifestation of something else that kind of looked good, and we tried to make it look much better than what it was. And I mean, you made some comments about the inside of the first floor of the hallway, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean-
agree with you. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I
I
think,
couldn't change it right now tonight, but when I looked at it, I'm like, oh my God, and then you said it.
I mean, I think building one is kind of like, it's closest to, you know, what we approved on 12 Pond Street. I don't think it's as detailed, but even on 12 Pond Street, we said, hey, before this goes forward, we need a full exterior package. We want to see all the trim, we want to see everything how it works, because it's still too cartoony, right? So we said that for 12 Pond Street, and I would imagine would say the same thing here, right? That we have to really see what it looks like, because it's too easy to, you know, these are.
Materials, some of you do that.
Well, it's not even about the materials, but it's like, well, how, you know, what size is the fascia really? I mean, you know, you can see on some of the dormer details that there's not enough depth for the structure in there. You know, unless you're using a 2x6, and then good luck getting the insulation in there. You know, it's stuff like that, which is a matter of like tweaking the program when you're used to doing it by hand, or, you know, or whatever. So it's those types of little things that, same thing with 12 Pond, it's gonna come back, because we wanna see it when it's real, you know. So again, I've said before, I think there's a solution in here, but I think it's, in a way, it's, I know we're having a hard time getting there.
Yeah, Tricia mentioned showing some kindness to the setback on building 3. I don't know what you have as far as the requirements for this, with the asphalt on the other side. As far as, because if you look at, I'm gonna walk over to the map.
Frankly, I think 2 is the more critical one, with the, but that might be a done deal. I understand that might be a done deal.
You know, how much space do you need here? You know, do you have 2 or 3 extra feet that you could shift it
You don't.
We don't. I mean, one of the comments your consultant made is that these spaces, in the previous design, when they backed out, they potentially impacted the loading space there. So the use of the 18 feet gets us, so we have 24 feet of backup. So there's nothing we can do in there. And then
Plus the
the
fire
issue with
truck.
the fire department, we changed this curb radius so they could do this and do that.
I think the question always is, like, these buildings are 82 feet wide. Like, what is magical about 82 feet? That is just set in stone. Every building should be 82 feet wide. You know? That's what I wondered.
Now, honestly, my perspective on this, I think building 2 is pretty good. I think building 3, I'm concerned, as has been, the issue has been raised, that you've got the ADA requirements, you got the lift in there, but then the unit itself has stairs in it and
Well, again, only one
ADA
of them
bathroom
has to be-
issues and, yeah, so
But we'll look at that interior, and we'll look at that set of stairs.
yeah, and if you can show that you've got a design that works from an ADA perspective on that, if it's gonna be an ADA compliant unit, that would be helpful.
Yep.
And
I'd like to
it,
comment on that?
yeah, come to the microphone.
We'll take a look at it.
Oh.
Yeah, that's, I don't know how hard that is.
In my discussions with the building inspector, there is interpretation of the code to what the code says, and then there's what you are mentioning. What the inspector said, the ADA compliance is into the building, just like in building 2. You have an entrance from the ground level. It doesn't say you have to have an elevator going up to the living spaces. Now, does that sound practical? But that's what the code says, and that is what the building official told me. He's like, this is all you need to do to meet the ADA requirement.
Yeah, and maybe the answer is for the internal stairway for the loft bedroom is that you specify that a stairway lift can be added by the residents
Funny
if
that
they
you
need
mention
to.
that, because it's the one page I did not flip to that I have a blown up of that, just in case that came up. Is what? Was right here, these, that I mentioned that.
On the right.
On the right, the lofted bedroom, you have the ADA elevator comes up here, right? And then I widened the stairs and I took the door, and this still needs some work, but I wanted to show that I took that in consideration, that a stair lift could. Now,
You're not required to install a
that
lift,
comes
not
into,
capable.
Right.
you can
But-
argue, well, does that really make sense practically? Well, it meets code, is what meets the ADA requirement. I was specifically told by the inspector that ADA requirement does not mean that we have to have an elevator going to the bedrooms. That as long as you have a way for them to get there, so there's practical reasons on the flip side of why it's not on the first floor, so, I actually think that, I feel that if you do have someone living there, that they would rather be where they are than be on the first floor. Building 2 is different because they are kind of isolated from everything else, so.
Yeah.
So those considerations, if you want me to give you a copy of my discussions with the inspector and his comments back to me, I have them and I can give them to you. But these things were discussed and talked about.
That is really useful to hear, thank you, that adds a lot.
I think there's just a difference between, one thing, with all due respect to the building inspector, I mean, it might be worth a call to the Massachusetts Accessibility Board, blanking on the actual official name. We're happy to answer questions about any individual plan. You can send it to them and they will talk to you about it. But I think there's also a difference between like, hey, this is what the code says, so I can do it, and, you know, what do you say as a designer? What do you say? You know? So I think there's lots of loopholes around everything that maybe destroy the meaning of what things are supposed to be. And I think we can do better than that.
Mark, do you have a comment on this?
Yes, I do. Good evening, Mark Cassoni. Home watching this for a little while, then I said, I need to come in. You're talking codes, and you want to talk a two-way street, but you're using codes as a detour. It's understandable to understand if you know the codes full-heartedly. And other than the codes, you're trying to dictate, it sounds to me when I was home, designs, changeovers, strike over, move a building 30 feet, whatever. But if you're not exactly up to date with the codes and following it day by day and coming in and seeing everything, going to the designer and whatever themselves face to face, those codes would be no good to understand, to talk about. So I'm coming into this and saying, what does the board know of the codes to dictate what they're trying to say tonight? That's one question.
I think different board members have different levels of familiarity. I don't think any of us are really all that professional when it comes to the building codes. So that's not generally our area of expertise.
Okay, and for that answer, shouldn't that answer be the same to try to coordinate through the building inspector and through the designer together? To be that much more familiar than going back and forth, trying to change things on the basis of the fly? They've been working on this since day one. I've been around since day one for it. And the board's been here since day one. And site design, and Dale, I'm sorry to put you to sleep if you're not understanding what I'm saying. Site design dictates everything, and also updated for interior means everything. Give them the credit, they've been doing this. The board's trying to change things on the fly. It's not right. What brought me in, I was looking at the zoning codes at home, and I don't have any papers on it, so I couldn't bring anything in. But what did bring me in was that you tried to change. Their attorney said, if you do this, we'll bring you to court. This town will lose on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Do you want me to respond?
If you feel like you need to.
I have no preference. I think what we are trying to do is get the best project overall, and that's where I'll leave my comment. Yeah. Go ahead.
Good evening, Emery Bond, 59 West Union Street, a butter. So I looked at the 12720 plans and how they were updated to the 22720 plans, and I noticed there was a sheet that was deleted that showed the 6-foot stockade fence that ran along the property, and now there's only section C on sheet 4 of 11 that shows a 4-foot fence. It doesn't say what the material is. I'm just curious on why that fence is so small, where the restrictive covenant said that it should be on a 7-foot effective screening barrier, and the town bylaws say 5-foot screening barrier, so it's smaller than the bylaws and the restrictive covenant. And when phase 1 was permitted and approved by the board, the residents at the Ferris property were able to get a 6-foot cedar fence with 8 to 10-foot arborvitaes. I'm just curious on why during phase 2, where these buildings are closer to all the abutters' property lines, that we're not going to get that same level of service.
So you're saying this is a change from the last draft of the plans?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just to speak to that, looking at the detail, I'll let you answer.
No.
However, on the detail on page sheet 11 of 11, there is an 8-foot typical wood stockade fence detail. I don't know what the change is.
I don't think it's 8 feet, is it?
On sheet 4, but I would obviously ask, Representative from Grady Consultant.
I think it's 6 feet, Pete. But it's the same, we do not reduce.
Oh, I'm
It's
sorry,
a
it's a 6
6
foot,
We did not
8 foot
reduce it.
wide.
It's showing
Okay.
8 foot wide between posts.
I'll tell you, you can look at the plans, and I'm telling you, there's no change in the fence, in 6 feet.
Bart is the civil
This
engineer.
is the civil engineer.
Yeah, my name's Bart Lipinski, I'm from Grady, I'm actually a landscape architect. Prepared most of this package. We have a 6-foot privacy fence. On that section, it is called out as 4, it was never changed to be 4, I don't know why it was 4. The plans call it out as a 6-foot privacy fence, the details call it as a 6-foot privacy fence. It's a 6-foot fence.
So you'll correct the place where it says 4?
It's the detail that we were asked to add in, it got put in, called that as a 4. So-
Okay.
But it will be 6, we'll update
So,
this.
so 4 is a mistake, and it should say 6. Okay, that helps.
And then the arborvitae plantings, they'll be 8 to 10 feet tall, like the Ferris property.
Correct.
No, they won't.
We-
What's on the plan? It's in the middle of the woods, and they have no sunlight, and they're probably gonna die.
There's a schedule on the planning, schedule that says the height of the. I don't know offhand, but-
Yeah, it says 5 to 6 feet on section C. So section C, just for the record, shows a
There's
5.
a landscaping plan, I think, on the top of the page. if I remember correctly.
So what does it show it's planted along there?
I would say the detail on page 11 shows,
5 to 6 footers.
I believe it shows. Oh, okay. The planting schedule, yeah. So it shows 5 to 6 feet in height. Under the evergreen tree, common name, green giant, arborvitae, second one down at the
Yeah.
top center of the planting schedule, across 5 to 6 feet.
But if they're gonna plant those there, they're gonna die?
That's along the whole side.
I think that's an opinion.
Okay, I'm just asking, because
You know,
if we
I-
plant them, they're gonna die, so maybe they should put something else that's not gonna die.
That is on the north facing slope, or north, it's, it's gonna be, it does face north there.
Kathy probably has a
I am
suggestion.
not a landscape architect, so I defer to,
Is it
Kathy will
exposed,
have a suggestion.
is it exposed on the other side, even though it's on the north side? You're nodding your head, yes. I have 2 western arborvitaes in the shade. They're still growing and they're still full and thick, and there's a bunch of easterns, which are getting mangled by the deer and slowly dying, that my neighbor put in. So I think he's gonna be okay. Because they're on a driveway, and the driveway faces north, and they're in the shaded deciduous trees during the summer. In the winter, they're exposed and they grow. So I think he's fine.
Thank
What do
you.
you expect?
We're gonna have a chat in regards to this landscape, and we'll talk about that as well.
Just don't wanna put some stuff in there that's gonna die, and
What's the chat we're gonna have, sorry?
I'm sorry?
You said
He's
we're gonna,
gonna talk to
we're
him.
gonna
Chat in
have,
regards to some of the other landscaping as well, so we'll.
Stuff in
where
the
it
front,
doesn't-
the stuff in the front, because I think you were commenting that you wanted more stuff added in the front. So I think that's what I'm adding.
Yeah, I don't think we're really that far from the answer on here. Different members, I think, have slightly different perspectives, but I think Yeah, one thing we mentioned last time is, we would like to replace that big sign that's designed to have a sign for the existing storage as well as for the separate, businesses in the new building one. We're not happy with that sign. We'd like to have a new sign come back that would replace that the planning board would approve.
Where's that thing at? Where did
That property, it's inked out, is that common property, or is that, who owns that?
It's a
Or-
common property.
It's part of the condominium common.
That was a
The
change, right?
responsibility for the installation of the sign was the storage company. They went, and from what I understand, got all the permits that they needed to install that sign. So if that's a discussion you wanna have, I'm sorry to say, you gotta have it.
Well, I'm saying we're not happy with that sign, as we said last time. And since that sign is also servicing this other building that's part of this permit here, I would like to see a different sign, even though, I know it means tearing out something you've just put in.
Might be able to
I
modify
would
it.
like to see that. I don't like this driveway down to the basement. I especially don't like it right in the front by 135. I am concerned that some of the interiors that you have, as you deal with some code issues, might have change impacts on the exteriors. We've had a long discussion on that. It's a risk where you'd have to come back to us. I personally am willing to live with that. I think at this point, if we address those two things, I think we're about ready, from my perspective, that I could go forward with it. I don't know where
Well,
other
really,
board members
just-
are.
just a question about the driveway. So you're talking about access for equipment and stuff like that. What equipment's going, I mean, there's stuff they couldn't take in the elevator and dolly it and wheel it across, or? So are you putting in a driveway?
I'm not an HVAC
But
guy,
I'm just
so-
saying, say, put the driveway in for a reason.
Yep.
And that reason is if they have to replace equipment, once every 10 years, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's.
If it's
I mean,
really necessary.
It's it's twofold. It's again for access to the tenants who will have storage space in there. We think I think we're all in agreement that storage down there is a good idea. You're having a dispute from the viewpoint of the access.
Because
Am I
are they
correct
gonna
on
be,
that?
so you're saying they're gonna be unloading and loading their cars there with storage?
We were just trying to make it convenient for somebody who has a storage space in there to go that, because otherwise, unless, these are all handicap spaces, which we have to provide. You got, I think there's one
There's
space
two
in there for
non-handicapped.
unload, get into the elevator and go down. Otherwise, I'm carrying stuff from over here through, whereas that's a nice little pull-in, park, and you walk in.
Yeah,
How
that's.
I
much
mean, we're
stuff?
trying
How
to
much-
provide a
I mean,
convenient.
how much stuff are they gonna be
I
storing?
think
It's
and-
incongruous.
Look,
Yeah.
We understand that's an issue.
yeah, no, I think for most people, if you're looking at it as residential storage, they're fine with saying, okay, this is gonna be an issue when I move in, this is gonna be an issue when I move out. The rest of the time, I'm mostly not gonna care. And if it's a little awkward moving in and a little awkward moving out, that's okay. And then with the HVAC, if they need some large access, maybe you have something where it's like, in the Midwest, to go to your basement, you go outside and you've got that, you lift up the thing and you go down. Maybe maybe there's something you lift up that has a access where if they need to lower something down, and maybe it's awkward, but they're only going to be replacing that equipment every 15 to 30 years. This is not something. I understand. Yes, you may have some large equipment, and you need a plan to get in and out when you're upgrading this stuff. You're replacing it, it's not uses half the energy in 30 years. But that's not an excuse for having this driveway right in front of the building that's going to be there all the time. These are things. the access for the basement is something, I think on a typical day, nobody's gonna be going in there. You don't wanna have a big prominent access for it that's gonna hardly ever be used. And it doesn't feel right. So,
Yeah, we will look at all that.
that's,
I guess my question is, are there other comments, or are we done from the viewpoint of revising the plan, the architect and this thing? We're talking about a few remaining issues. We're certainly gonna have to continue this hearing. I guess my question is, do we work on a decision? We know we got 3 issues, because, I mean, every time we come back, these are the same ones coming up. Do we have a decision? We just finish it out and argue it out and finish it up next time we're here?
For me, the sign in the driveway there, I'm not so happy with the stairs. It might be nice to ask the building inspector if you can have residential grade stairs instead of commercial. Cause that would answer the question, and it would make them look better in the renderings if you can say, oh, now I can render it as these shorter stairs, and maybe we're all happy with it. That would be a fairly, it's a simple conversation, and then maybe you can fix that, and then
Yeah. We will have that discussion.
And I don't know if what issues other board members have that are different from what I've said. And I think if other board members have things,
Well-
now would be a good time to say so.
Yeah, 'cause the stairs really aren't an issue to me. That's whoever's living there. It's an issue for whoever's gonna live there more than that, because they're way in the back of everything. That driveway bothers me. I mean, it's gonna be like a non-used, 99.9% of the time, it's just gonna be a driveway.
Right.
And the design review didn't like it either, right? So, unless there was some reason that you have to have that for some scenario, or else you can't do it, and
On your comment about the sign, I mean, I'll talk to those guys. The reality is, if I talk to them and wanna change it, they have to approve. And that might be like, no.
so that's,
I could say like, I think, all right, let's change it.
so that's on their property?
No, it's on a mutual property, but there's a
But-
condominium agreement, right? So like,
And we're only entitled to one standing sign, so if they refuse to modify it, they have the right to keep a sign for them.
But
Do we even need a sign? I mean, that has the sign on the building itself, right? And then like the commercial bays are intended, they're gonna have signs above them, and they're intended to be, work jump off places, right? So like, I'm amenable to, even instead of replacing, which adds cost, is like, can we get rid of that sign? It's just like, everybody knows CubeSmart's there, the sign's on top of the awning, right? Like,
I totally hear you.
they've got that visibility, and then like, I feel like, obviously your opinion too, but like, do you really need a sign for those other 10 bays in the back, right?
Well,
And there's
we're gonna
gonna
do-
be a sign above them, right?
Yeah.
So
And
somebody's gonna
therefore
go
we know
back
who's
and,
there.
there it is, okay, ABC glass, whatever.
Yeah.
So, bad precedent.
To totally contradict what you just said,
Okay, fine.
I understand that the storage business, you can see the sign on the building, but I also appreciate them wanting a sign at the driveway that makes everyone know, turn in here if you're going to our business. I appreciate that.
It's a huge
However,
building,
that-
Preston.
It's a question of your belief that
just-
that's not the
It's a
sign that
ridiculous-
But just to
should be
throw,
there, that's
I just
all.
wanna throw a comment in there.
But
How many businesses can go in those 8 bays or whatever? How are you gonna fit all that on that sign?
No,
anyway?
that sign
Yeah,
is
that's
not
right.
for those bays.
That's a good point. No, it is actually.
Oh, it is for those
It's
bays.
For everything back there, these are all,
You're right.
these are all
It's gonna be
for
like
all those, yeah, so it's
9
gonna be,
strips.
you won't even be able to read it when you
Yeah,
drive by.
yes. It
So
would
I've been
look,
thinking about that
it
myself,
will look
too.
towards where
It's
each
actually
strips
gonna
are.
look worse.
It's one sign for each building, and each building has 4 businesses
It's
in
like
it.
the ones
So
over
that means
on,
each one of those squares has gotta
126.
fit 4 signs in that
My
square, so it
understanding is,
doesn't even make sense.
my understanding was
Yep.
that the contractor bays
Yep.
were not expecting people to actually show up, so they didn't need a sign on 135.
Unless they have an office there.
I don't
But-
think they are, but like it's, Route 135, advertising, it's good to have your name there. But the fact is, when you look at what you was just saying, it's Joe, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's gonna look ridiculous.
Yeah.
with 9, I thought that myself, so I don't know how that's gonna work.
It's like
So I
driving
will go
past-
talk to them,
Yeah.
and I'll say something, but in the
Yeah.
end, if they say no way, it's part of our marketing, it's what we bought, and it's all this stuff, I'm gonna be kinda stuck myself.
So that's, but it's, if it's a mutual place, you guys don't have any more say in it? It's all up to them now? Because if it's mutual, it seems like there would be more people involved.
They had the
Everybody would have
right
a say.
understanding that it's a combined sign. Their obligation was to install it. Their obligation was to get the permits to install it. So if they take the position,
But,
we went and got permits and we're not changing it,
but it's a
We're
matter
stuck.
of who owns it.
huh?
Who owns that?
Well,
Everybody, right? So it's part of,
Condominium owns the land?
both of them own it, right?
Right.
So theoretically, just.
So
jumping in.
theoretically,
But our
it's
deal
part
with
of
them
this.
is that they have the right to have equal size of the largest signs on a panel sign. And their obligation was for them to get the permits, them to build them. We reimburse them as we bring people, we bring them on the panel. So they were fully responsible for getting all the permits,
That's-
which I understand they did.
Let's leave the legalities and ownership and how all that works aside. I think the sense here is that the sign, we were not expecting, when we did the previous site plan, for a sign like that to come up. And people in the community have complained they don't like the sign. Since this sign also services this new phase, it seems reasonable to review what's appropriate signage. We'd like to fix it. We'd like to get something nice, and that we're all happy with and the community isn't complaining about.
I'd like,
And-
I'd like
and-
no sign. I'll just say that.
I
I understand your point. I'm just saying. 'cause- yeah.
Can I ask a
I
question?
certainly understand wanting sign for whatever businesses are in building one, because otherwise there's no visibility, and that is something that they want to attract people from the road to turn in there
And there are
for.
signs, there are
Yeah.
gonna be wooden signs on the front of that building as in the drawing. There could be
But you
signs
can't see
in
them
front of
driving
each
by, you
unit.
can't see
It's gonna be
a lot
lighted.
of them.
Yeah, I don't
Okay.
think that's effective.
Yeah.
Those are intended more as like a directory once you
Yeah.
get in there,
Yeah.
but I get your point.
Is there a, because we're gonna go to these folks, but is there a sign that you can tell us that it's something that would be acceptable, so we can go to them and say, this is what the town would generally accept?
That is a perfectly valid and good question. I can't
But
name
more
one.
like the town signs, like a sign that's
Well-
lit with lights rather than
So
backlit.
out,
If we get
and
that-
externally
that
illuminated.
Looks, yeah. But my point again, I know you just wanna get into it, but my point is, I mean, you guys have an agreement that they're gonna build a sign.
Right.
If I make agreement with my neighbor to build a shed in the middle of the road, I can't do it, just cause I have an agreement. We need to know who's responsible for that, so that we can decide if that's part of this project or that project.
Well,
Whether
I
you
mean, I
guys
can
have
show
an
you the
agreement who's
documentation.
building it or not, makes no difference
Yeah.
to us. You guys
Right.
can agree to whatever you want. Oh, we
Right.
said they're gonna build it,
Right.
that's fine. If it's on your property or shared property, then it might be part of this job too, so it's part of this. So that's, just
We
wanted to
know-
make that point, that if we can sort that out, that,
Okay, well, let's
Well,
move
so
on.
they know, okay.
We've raised the issue of the driveway, we've raised the issue of the sign.
well, now I just
What
wanted to-
other issues are there that we want them to address before they come back? Or before,
I think
before
we're
we,
okay on the parking.
before we vote, yeah,
I think they have to take another pass at the plans. Doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to have any issue worked out, but it,
The internal, Trish, or
the internal plans. Because for instance, on building one, I mean, the current location of the stair, which may have worked awesome for a completely commercial building, is a little crazy for a residential building. It doesn't, that's why these units are getting so, a little crazy. So if those are changes are gonna be made, let's make them now with the site plan, to get units that work and to get a site plan that works.
I think that'd be up to them probably to check and see if that's gonna work. Right.
The stair at 3.
On one,
Okay.
where it has the two stairs. You know,
I mean,
I
you
would
guys might
choose,
wanna find out if that's gonna work or not, because then that could be a whole game changer on that whole area, right? If
what's
it
gonna
doesn't
work
work,
on it.
if those stairs don't comply.
I'm saying that if,
You want them to do that so that the exterior doesn't have to change if they need to modify that.
yeah.
So I'm
I-
thinking they should check that and make sure that's,
I'm just saying,
Gonna-
the first floor is pretty, yeah, the bathrooms might have to get bigger, the commercial space might be different or whatever. And it's very flexible, the first floor with the commercial space, but I think looking at, since the second and third floor have become residential space, where they weren't before, now we have a staircase in the front of the building, which feels commercial, but it isn't, it's residential, so, you know, what prevents people from going up there during the day? You know, what, I'm just saying, if these plans started out as residential, they wouldn't look this way.
Well, at the top of the stair on the second floor, there's security access. So
Right.
if you're a commercial person, you're not going up the stairs.
Right,
to
so you
be able to access the residential areas.
So anyone that comes in to go to a commercial space could go up the stairs, but they can't get in a door.
Right. Well,
They
would be-
can't get into the level.
And they would also be directed to, by a directory inside the door and also on the exterior, that the commercial spaces are on the first floor and on the second floor. Residential, private units, second, there'll be some sort of interior signage. And then if they happen to walk up the stairs, there's gonna be a key code, they can't get in because it's obviously a residential secured area.
Yeah, I understand there's a ways around it, you know, I'm just
Ways around
saying.
what?
There's a ways around having a stair in the front that's not meant for everyone that comes in the door, right? And that's open. It's not like you go through through a locked door first and then go up the
But really,
stair.
where would it
Wow.
go? Because the elevator's in the back, and you can't put it on the front, even if the driveway under wasn't there, because people wouldn't go in the stairs there.
I'm not
then
saying,
walk all the way around.
yeah, I'm not saying, I mean, there's lots of locations for a stair, I'm not giving you like the
But
answer.
where? If the elevator's going in the back, where exactly would you put it? I'm interested, because you wouldn't put it in the back 15 feet away from the elevator. You're trying to spread out the means of egress, right? The same-
Elevator doesn't count as a means of egress.
Right, no, but the elevator's next to the other stairs.
Oh, right, yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, I mean, there's other,
But
you're just
I don't see
usually.
a need for a door at the first level going up those stairs.
I'm not
forcing
I'm
people to-
not saying that there's an answer here. All I'm saying is that if this project had started out as a residential project, I think the footprint would be different. And so I think it's worth a pass at the floor plan to see
Right,
if,
but we're too far beyond changing the
I'm
footprint of the
just,
building.
they asked my opinion,
Yep.
and I am providing it.
Yep.
So
Okay.
your opinion is you think that we should change the footprint of the building now?
She's just
No.
making a statement.
No,
and-
I am saying, I think the floor plan is worth a look to get better units.
We're already in agreement with you on that. We're gonna work on that.
You know, so,
We're gonna work on that. We're gonna work on it.
and that might mean moving one of the stairs. It's an odd location of stairs
Yeah.
for 4 units. That's
Yeah.
all I'm saying. Maybe
Yeah.
there's an easier answer that gets you better units.
Yeah.
That's
We are
all.
gonna work on the inside.
Yeah.
Okay.
We are going
Um,
to.
it would set you back a bit, but just, you know, I'm not a professional looking at this. If you moved the stairs from the ones without the elevator, to, the side where you currently have that driveway that we don't like. And if you
Move the
put,
elevator?
no, leave the part the elevator
Oh,
alone.
no, that's what I had just said, but then what, people are gonna come down a set of stairs, walk 1,200 feet to their car in the back? It's just, and we were also trying to make it feel like it's kinda like part of the community, right? You walk down the sidewalk, walk up, if you wanted to walk into a business that's there, you're kinda like walking into an entry.
Yeah, but my point is, if you put the stairs, around the other side, then you've got stairs on both ends of the building, and from a hallway flow, it looks like it would work better. There may be other reasons why that's not a good idea. And I understand not wanting to change the footprint of the building, because that takes a lot more design expense, and once you start changing the footprint of the building, that changes the outside of the building, we've got to look at it again. I understand not wanting to do that. I can also look at this and say, but maybe that's what gets you the best building. So I'm just throwing that out there. You can consider that. And maybe as you look at the design of the residential area a little more, maybe that's the conclusion you'll come to as well. I don't know. One other thing that Joe just whispered to me, noted the hallways are only 4 feet wide, it looks like.
That's what this,
That's what it says. I see a little thing that says 4
That's all
feet.
they,
And is that really all that's required for code? That feels narrow.
if you read the code, hallways have to have 4 foot is to code, but you have to have you can't have a certain, that can only be for a certain distance. Then you have to have a space for people to move out of the way. There has to be, it's not called a refuge, I can't remember the name of it, but that is to code, and the hallways if you look, again,
So you believe,
again, going back to the stairs and everything, in one of our original designs, considering residentials and whatever, we actually did have the stairs on the building, they're on the equal ends. And, you know, I'm trying not to get,
Well, it's just more
I don't want to be frustrated about this, but the comments from the board make it feel like we have never thought about these things. That is not true. We have played those, and again, that's probably why this is not, it's not your job to design the inside for us. I understand it's your job to look at it and have comments about it, right? But if that was, we could be here for decades trying to figure that out. That has been considered, and putting those, there was reasons why the hallways would then be even more sporadic, and it breaks up the spaces more. And architecturally, you're, again, if we put that into the front, the idea was now that's going to be a commercial look. It's not going to look residential. How do we make it look more residential? That's why, these things have been considered. To me, this looks way more residential than trying to put elevators on the 2 ends, and now it looks like what they're, do you think that the buildings they're building in downtown Framingham look residential, but they're not, that's a mix? So that's what it would look like if we went that direction. It's not gonna look residential next to these houses, and the houses that these buildings are next to are just as unique from each other. There's no semblance between their architectures either. So which one are we supposed to choose? We're trying to make it match in, so we have considered all these things. We're not going into this just like, okay, let's just throw something at them. Of course we have to entertain these things, and everyone's going to have their own opinions of that. And I appreciate it. And I think one of my strengths is I listen to my customers, just like I have listened to you, and I've tried to make these changes, and I've tried to be considerate of everyone involved. And I understand it evolves, but I think, when we say that we're close, I'm not sure that's I would like for actual, if you have something to say, I think if you sent me something, instead of just saying, well, it's just not quite there, that really doesn't help me, I need more definitive than that. If you, I can't read your mind. Now, I understood your comment, like you gave a legitimate thing about the dormers on building 2, and when I took that, I'm like, okay. And then I started playing with it, I'm like, oh my gosh, now this is, because you probably didn't have time, you were just looking at the plans for the first time, and you don't have time to run all the scenarios through your head. And when I go back, I'm actually looking at all of the scenarios through my head. It's like, I would love to do that, because everything that I've been taught tells me to do that, but it's just not gonna,
And we argued about it, because I'm like, she said she wanted that, you're gonna have to figure that out. He's like, it's not gonna work.
Well, that's the thing, I'm trying to, to put forth too is that, like, these are things that are suggested, like, I'm seeing something that's not sitting right? And so I'm pointing those out. I don't know what the right answer is. I can't design this building like sitting in front, like, and, just redesign it for you. But when something doesn't sit right, I'm saying, take another look at this, take another look at this.
I of the opinion, I think they look pretty darn good myself. And I've had other people tell me these look great, so
I think building one is looking good. I'm just not convinced about the inside. I think the units, and that's why I said, let's look at those units, and because then if we need to move around some windows and stuff on the outside so that the inside now works, then we do that. Because yeah, I'm not gonna live in any of these units. Do I still care what they're like? Absolutely I do.
We're gonna look at it. I don't want to make
Yeah.
you belabor the point. I understand what you're saying, and we're gonna work on it.
Yeah, and I do appreciate all the work you've put in. It's not an easy site, it's not an easy job, it's not an easy mix of programs. I get it. You have a lot of money involved in it, I get that too. I appreciate that. I'm just gonna push for the best product we can get.
Yep.
And I apologize if I get a little rough sometimes, I'm just trying to make my point.
I watch
The
you.
same.
You've made some great points, and I feel the same way.
Thank you,
I really realize I respect it. Thank you.
thanks.
Where I'm at is, I'm not so concerned about the inside because you guys have to sell them, you guys have to rent the place. That's, if they're ugly or whatever, that's a financial, my more concern is the parking and the exterior and how it fits in with the neighbors' houses and, what's gonna be ugly or look good. So, because I think, I know you like to design the inside, but I think that's more of their issue, whether the inside, like if it's a weird layout on the inside, I'm not gonna buy one if I don't like it. Maybe someone else will, but that's up to them, to decide a business decision to make that work so that they can get the most money or most value out of it they can. And if they can't, as long as the outside looks like what we want it to look like, then I'm okay with that. I'm not an architect, so
I hear what you're saying.
I know, I hear what you're saying too, but my concern more is that exterior and area, and you guys are gonna do what you have to make that work and go by the code. And if you have to take a loss because the outside needs to look like this, and you have to do something that's your decision and your issue. So that's where I stand. I'm more concerned about the way it looks outside. Like I said, the signage, just the whole appearance of it, and how it blends in with the neighborhood. And, the trees, I'm concerned about the trees and stuff too, because that needs to be addressed. And I'm sure you guys will take all the suggestions and make it as good as you can, but I'm not really worried about that too much, the interior. Other than that driveway going in, I don't think that really needs to be there, but unless there's some reason.
Yeah, I've got the driveway, the relook at the interior, the look at the stairs, the look at the signs, and I think that was it, which we'll all do beforehand. Our hope was that maybe we can start drafting a decision, so at least we can start talking about conditions as well, and whatever we come back, you're either gonna agree or not agree, or we can condition something that says that plan, but do this. That's what we're hoping for.
It's also the sign that I'm gonna talk to next door. I'm
Yeah,
also gonna,
well, the signs both in the nature of the wall signs as well as the stand.
There are a number of wooden signs for businesses that are externally lit, that look fairly nice.
Yep.
And don't look at the one in the median when you go down there in the middle of town by CVS that they post all the stuff on, because that's not a good example of a sign.
Or the sign at the gasoline station 2 doors down.
So I think you got I think you hit the points that I'm most concerned about. I do think just I get the comment on the interior exterior thing. I'm not gonna go there, but I do think something basic stuff on these the floor plans. if 4-foot hauls are the code and that's the bottom dollar, fine, but, I am a little bit concerned about that. I understand the point about being able to get by, but I don't know. I don't see those openings that we're talking about there. So, I mean, basic safety stuff from an interior perspective would be where I would stop. And then I would, on the back end of the lot, so here, right here,
Yeah.
I'd love to see, like, I know you have some trees there, but for me, that's where I'd like to see some beefed up landscaping, just line of sight and stuff with the school around this bend here. So,
Where is it?
just here,
Where the other
like the back end
storage
there. I
area
know you have
is.
some trees
Okay.
there. I'm just
Yeah.
saying, like, to the extent that you can provide a little, like, more green there, just a little bit more line of sight from the school in terms of softening it up a bit. That's all. I do.
We'll also take a look, I don't know if the original,
Density of plantings.
Right, so if
Thank
you
you.
add more, and it's in our zoning review stuff, if you read it online, it's very
So-
specific about it.
yeah.
And like, you should be buffering with density of plantings, and I've got pictures, it only takes 3, a couple of trees and a
Yeah.
full shrub and enough
You gotta
space
sit down and talk to him, and we can, for that, because and we'll take a look too, I don't know, I can't recall from the viewpoint of that second storage building, whether there was any landscaping around there as well, but we'll pull out that,
I've been
we'll
looking
pull out
at
that
it.
plan and take a look.
I've been looking at it. It looks like there's snow storage and some drainage stuff. I'm not sure how much there is,
Yeah.
which is why I've driven back
Between
there to
the
kind
two,
of
we
look
want
at
some
that line of
screening.
sight. Yeah. So
Between the
if
two
we can
sites.
add some green in there, it'd be great. I appreciate these. They're helpful. Thank you. It helps a lot to visualize it, and it's appreciated. Thank you.
Yep.
And I overall I think this has come a long way. I know you guys are trying to get it there, so I understand that. So.
To some extent, the whole issue too, the quicker we can get through with this process, the quicker we get started, the quicker we can get finished, and, I think everybody wins.
But the driveway's a big issue for me, just to be really clear. So, the front sunken one.
Mm-hmm.
Phil, do you have any comments? We hit everything.
The driveway is probably the sticking point for me as well. I tend to share Trish's sentiment on some of the issues, but I also feel like, from the legal standpoint, like, that she might have like the ethical kind of standpoint, but legally kind of lean towards that we probably need to focus on the outside, and if they have to come back, I mean, I think that we'll all be in the position of, if there are changes that need to be made because of lack of foresight, that we're probably gonna be pretty critical of those, so, I think the gauntlet has been thrown down, so.
And you will need to review the tape of the last meeting that you missed,
Okay.
or read over the minutes once
work
they're
with Phil.
written,
I'll work with
and
Phil on that.
you'll have to sign an affidavit to that effect so that you can vote, is the process on that, since you missed a meeting.
And one real question about the driveway thing, because you're talking about access to equipment and stuff, and that people are gonna probably use the elevator to load in. On the parking, are you right at the limit of parking spaces?
Yeah, we're at 86.
Because I see right by the
Yeah,
elevator.
but the
How many have
86
to-
is kinda, we used a number that we anticipate to be the numbers of employees within the contractors' areas, so there's,
But my point is not about the number or anything. And my point was just because, if you're right at the limit, there's 3 handicap spots right by the elevator,
Yeah.
and then there's 2 spots. To make those
one is a
30-minute,
loading spot.
30-minute, whatever, loading and unloading, because if they're working on equipment, they're gonna wanna not have someone parked there. If they're doing, maybe there's one of those
That-
spots
that-
is a loading only, if that's
That's not a
possible.
bad idea, if the board has no objection, posting one of those is 30-minute limit.
Because I know if people are moving and they can't get there, they're gonna be parking behind them and in the handicap and all that.
Yeah.
So if that might be something to think about.
And
I'm just-
I could be wrong, but I would think that a parking spot that says 30-minute parking limit is
Still a
still a
parking-
parking
Is it still
spot.
parking spots?
So I don't think
That would
that
be-
changes your
Without
calculations.
that driveway, that would be a suggestion,
No, I think
because
that's a good idea.
that could be a total disaster.
That may actually be advisable on both of those spots, So that they're
People.
primarily for customers of the businesses to have
Yep.
30-minute or 1
Well,
hour.
people.
Yeah.
And people coming
Yes.
in and out.
Maybe an hour, because you
Yeah.
wouldn't want it
Well,
necessarily
I'm not-
30 minutes or something like that.
Yeah. Well, I think, yeah, however long loading, because I think they're more for loading and if people need to
Right.
get in and out, because that could be an issue with, if you didn't have that place. Otherwise, people might even pull in there and start unloading, and leave their car there all day.
All day.
And, you know,
Yep.
So
You also
that-
might-
that-
Oh, I was just gonna say, there's also one parallel parking spot right in the corner, down the deepest one next to building 3, that if a person is parked in spot number 2 away from the corner, I'm not sure how you're getting in there, into that spot, parallel parking.
Which ones, these ones over here?
Nope, down. On the corner, right there.
Oh, yeah.
So if
Yeah, these
someone,
are anticipated for that residential unit in this unit.
right, but if someone's in spot 2 away from the corner, I'm
Well,
not sure.
these are parallel spaces, I think your requirement would be to be 24 feet long, which is what they are.
Yeah, but to get to parallel park into a spot, right?
You need what?
If you're parallel parking,
Yep.
you're either pulling forward and backing into the spot, or you're
Yeah.
backing backwards down that
into the
drive
corner.
to get into the spot. I'm just saying, it's a tricky one. So if there can be more length in that, so that you can actually get in and out of that spot, it's probably not gonna be a big deal. You probably have
We'll
lots
take a
of.
look at that, maybe we'll
that's
designate
tricky.
both of those to that residential tenant, and it's like nothing, it's like having a tandem driveway.
the-
We will, the engineer will
building,
on building 3 in the far unit, the one on the end, so that is intended, it has a lift in that as well, to be
I'm
hit.
sorry?
The unit on the far end with the long staircase, building
Yeah.
3,
Does not have a lift.
it does not have a lift, correct?
We're only required to have one.
Right.
And so that lift is in the unit on the far end, the other end.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah, the accessible one is here.
Okay, and that's close to the handicap space, which is where I was getting at, so that's fine. And the only, my only comment with the parking, you say you're right on the line,
That's the middle building.
provided just,
with the
okay.
parking there.
So that's where interior plans do matter,
those are
because the
here.
bedrooms do drive parking.
Yeah.
So
The one thing,
that's where changing that
we're
can
looking
mess
at building
with.
3, okay,
the one
gotcha.
other thing that we
I'm on
haven't
building.
taken credit for either is any parking other than the residential in here, which we're taking credit for. I don't know, like, with these contractors will pull into their own garage, but we're still.
As long as you
providing
can legally
6
take
months.
credit for it, then that's fine with me,
Right.
but I would defer to whatever.
Well, we didn't put it on the
Someone's taking
plans, right?
credit for stuff.
For inside?
No, we're not counting any interior layout where somebody could park is part of the parking requirement.
Yeah, and I think the number of spaces for general service employees is vastly overestimated.
Yeah, we're actively guessing as to the number of employees. We will, as part of each condominium unit, designate how many employees can be in that unit so that we don't run amok of the total.
Well, the reality is, some of the people really actually are just gonna park inside, and that's part of the reason the building's being deep. So
Yeah.
some people will just pull in, contractors will come, will pull his truck in and just be inside, close the door.
Okay. And just to be clear, as a public hearing, I think we've heard from everybody who's physically in this room, but if any members of the public have anything more to say before we close this for the night, not close this overall, please speak up now. Okay, good.
Emma hasn't said anything tonight.
I agree with Peter.
Perfect. So I think at this point, I think we're ready to continue this.
Our next 2 planning board meetings would be in 2 weeks, which would be March 12th, and following that'd be March 26th, I'm sorry.
The 12th is fine to us. We'll push John and Bart to make sure they get everything we promised you we'd take a look at tonight.
Okay, and we already have the Alden Street on the 12th.
Alden Street will be on the 12th,
We
correct?
may have somebody else, so I won't be here, so if we could work on a decision before I leave, that would be great.
Yeah,
You
if-
guys
if-
can hang out the last details of the meeting.
if we could at least have a first pass at a decision, that would be, that is a good thing. Just so we can have,
If that's the case, you know, there's a lot of stuff going on with regarding bylaws and town meeting that we're talking to after, so I can't guarantee that. With my workload coming up the next 2 weeks, that will be a definite, but I can try my best.
okay.
But just to put it on record with the board and with the applicant, I forecast this decision to be fairly detailed, and it needs to be fairly detailed, because of the project and the complexity of the project. So I don't want to miss anything. But with that said, I'll try to start to work it together, but I would not. I do not want to rush
Yeah.
a decision of this nature.
No.
It's happened before and we've missed a few
And I
things
think
here and there.
that has
I mean-
happened. Excuse me, can I finish? Thank you. We wouldn't want to rush a decision of this nature with any elements that we may, look over. So I think this board needs to be very thorough in drafting that, and I think 2 weeks could be fairly rushed with the workload that's going to be coming up, and with 12 Alden Street on the agenda.
But you might be able to get a start on it.
Get a little bit of a head start on
Yeah,
it, but
all
like
the basic stuff. that we
basic
usually
stuff.
put
But I
in.
think I think we need
There's
to
a
be.
lot of stuff
There's
we
a
need
lot
to-
of stuff that we need to add
And
in.
even when we make a decision, we're probably gonna add a lot that you won't know how it's gonna go until
Correct.
we have a meeting, so.
Exactly. So I think we need to take our time
Go
and
down the checklist of all the
Exactly.
things we need to
that's all.
cover.
That's all. I want everyone to be aware
Yeah.
that this is a fairly thorough decision that needs to take place and transpire.
But it's kind of that draft,
The draft will be.
which we kind of went through tediously here for 12 Pond Street. Can we get a copy of that so that we can think about
We
all
can start
those
to think
things
about
in
it.
context with this project?
We can try to get that to you as soon as possible, but I think we need to just, from my standpoint,
want
we
the
need to
Pond
be
Street
thorough.
Yeah, almost.
She's
Yeah.
talking about taking a look at the Pond
Yeah,
Street
I can
draft,
email out the Pond Street
just so we
decision.
can go over that.
Just so
and
we
see.
can go over the decision, and I'll email out the other, the 28 Main and the other buildings, the mixed-use buildings.
But I
with
think based
21.
on some of the problems we had with the last phase of construction, we're gonna wanna be very specific on, dust control.
Yes,
And,
the
things like
residents, the
that.
abutters,
The
work
construction
hours,
process.
Police details.
everything, yes.
A lot of that's pretty standard language and decision stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
We just gotta make
stuff
sure
that we
we
don't
get it.
always, we're not always as careful about as we should be, and we wanna make sure
I
we're.
would be happy if you wanted to get me your most recent mixed-use project, to take that as a format, address the specifics of this in the same way you did with those, and give it to you, and you can work on the conditions.
I think, excuse me to finish, and I know you've been in the business for 35 years, and I've only been in the business for a fraction of that, but I have never let an applicant's attorney write a decision for a board that I is staffing, and so I'm gonna take the first stab at it, and then we can get that over to you. And that's just the way I believe business is correctly done, and I would advise the board of that's the way we should move
I
forward.
agree.
And just to clarify, the last mixed-use building we did was on a flat, totally paved lot that didn't have the kind of site alterations you've got here.
Which I mean,
So there's a
conditions are
whole
gonna be
nother set
specific,
of
no
conditions that
question
completely didn't apply there that do apply here.
Right.
So we can't just copy that. But anyway, since we have Alden Street at 7:15, I assume,
I would put this at 8:30.
okay. Yeah. So that way you don't have to show up and sit around for too long. Is there a motion to continue this until the second Thursday of March at 8:30?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes 5-0.
We're also just gonna
Do you want,
as a
do you have
follow-up,
extra copies of the full-size plans? Do you want them?
happy to take them. We're also gonna have to move the due date back for the decision, Attorney Barbarian.
I'm sorry?
We're gonna have to also move the decision date back for the decision. I know we moved it
Yeah,
to
after the 12th, yeah.
after the 12th.
Yeah.
Thank you.
A week after that?
I would request a later time.
Huh?
I would say at least 2 weeks.
2 weeks?
Yeah, thank you. So we can, if there's any other questions or loose ends, we could at least come back to that planning board meeting, on the 26th. I think that would most likely be, that's the most appropriate action.
Okay, at this point, we are wrapping up the, oh,
Public comments, I gotta get up at 5:30, so we can wait.
oh,
Separate project,
Uh,
not.
come to the microphone and tell me what your concern is.
Nothing to
I
do
have
with.
pictures on this to show up there, and I have no idea how this works.
What is this about? Just,
128 Main.
okay.
So imagine my surprise when I drove by and I see the building in the neighbor's tree. And I've looked at the plans because I'm on design review. So that prompts me a couple days later when I have more time to pull my car over, park in the next door lot, and walk around and take some pictures. So I'm gonna start with a couple of pictures of something, whether that it's residential, but the trees were left on the lot are fabulous because it's basically screened the building. I'm not actually sure what's going on here.
This is for what, John? 128 Main.
The tree?
The tree, yes. That's on my radar, that's on everyone's radar.
Is this showing up?
Yeah, you're good to go. I expect.
Sorry, I'm not talking about
No,
this.
no. I would just, Peter, can you please email me the continuance request, and we're good to go.
Thank you for your time.
So this is on Fountain Street, and they just put this house up. And these 3 trees are, there's actually 4 of them, are scaling the house back from the street. And they're also making it look like that house has been there forever, when in fact, if you really know what you're looking at, and you're not zooming by commuting to work, you see a house and you see the trees and you think the house has been there for a long time. And if you don't know anything about the town, you don't know it's brand new. So that's one of the pictures I have of that site.
So what are you saying to this, Kathy?
What I'm saying to you is, this
Is it an
is
example
far,
of something?
yeah, of what we should be doing downtown.
Okay.
And on 126.
So this is an example of something that you want in regards to another project?
Pretty much everything we think about when we're putting stuff in town, this adds, leaving these trees has added somewhere between $10,000 and $20,000 to their property, and maybe more. If they go to resell it and they haven't killed the trees by doing something else in the process, then they're gonna appreciate even more. And they're doing all those other things we all take for granted. Cleaning the air, cleaning the water, dissipating stormwater, erosion, they're making it a pleasanter environment, they're shading the street, all that stuff. I think a lot of you guys are already familiar with that, guys and gals, sorry. So downtown, we've got a building and a tree. They cut down another tree that was a 3-trunk tree on the side. And based on what I looked at with the plans, because I looked at the plans today before I came here, I went back and said, did we miss something? So one of the things I think we're missing just in general in our design process is we're not showing adjacent trees and adjacent properties. We don't really have a good.
If the tree isn't on the property that's under decision, then, like,
But we
don't
got a
have
building and a
control.
tree right now. We got a neighbor's tree, that was cut down,
I'm not familiar with that, but, okay.
and we got an oak tree, we got a.
So you're saying that the person building 128 Main cut down a tree that's not on their property?
Well, unless I'm unfamiliar with the plans. So when I saw the site plans, and I just went back today and looked at them, those trees are not represented on their site plan. The old one,
The old ones or the new
the
one?
original one, here's how the property is and here's what we're gonna change, or all the new ones. So now we're missing all those things the trees do, plus the screening, which is huge. And we
And
also
there's
have,
definitely a landscape plan that was part of that 128 main
well,
decision.
where they're in, we always expected that oak tree, which is a pin oak, was gonna stay there, and then they were gonna put another tree
Yeah.
next to it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they've moved the building, I don't know if they've made it bigger, I don't know what they've done over there, but it's not the way we planned on it. So when we went over, when Nat Strasberg was here as a planner, and we set some stuff for design review for downtown, it was trees or planters. Not none. At the fronts on the street side of the building, so that we could create a green corridor and we could create the look of this town is loved and appreciated. The people who are doing business here love and appreciate it. It's a pleasant, charming environment to be in. And what we're seeing over there is none of that right now.
I mean, it's a building under construction, right? It's
If you go and look at it and take a good look at it, it looks to me like the second story and more is being built into that tree. Now, I haven't been up there, I haven't gotten up on a lift and taken a look, but I'd put good money on it.
Well,
I usually tell my husband I'm gonna bet him an ice cream when I know I'm right, and he
They-
says,
they-
I'm not betting you.
They've clearly broken or cut a number of branches.
Well, the tree isn't gonna do well for starters, even if they haven't. And that building isn't supposed to be next to that tree.
So-
I think it's off its lot line, but I don't know for sure. And either way, we're not taking into account the neighboring trees on the properties that we might think are part of the facade. So I have a picture.
In the decision, though, we specifically asked for protection of that tree on the corner.
Right, and you didn't
So we
ask
did
for,
take that into
you didn't
account.
ask for enough, and I will have some of those things for you shortly. I've got other things I'm working on for design review. But here's the southeast facing facade of this. Now, this is where I have a real philosophical difference between movies, drawings, and pretty facades matching up to what we're gonna see in the final product.
So your point, you're letting us know, so future projects, we wanna make sure we consider
Well,
this.
whatever we can mitigate out of this mistake.
Because this one,
Not
yeah,
like we're
isn't
gonna make
that
this guy
something
move
for
his
the,
building now, but
The-
he needs to pay for some 2-inch copper trees downtown, or somewhere else in our town, like on the railroad tracks on 41 Main over here. We can replace some of the invasive, but that's that tree. And then shame on us, because some of those other facades, they don't show this tree in it. And we need to stop accepting these kinds of documents as official. They need to actually show it on, just like Tricia was saying, real documents. So we know really where stuff is, and we need to know really where stuff is on other documents. Because this is unfair to the people in this town. And it's unfair to us. We thought we were getting X and we're getting something else.
and
I don't agree
is
with
that
that
for the
thought.
inspector to,
So
how he
I've looked at
enforces
the,
that
so I've
moving
looked at the site plan. I've been onto that site. I've looked at it. The building is appropriately placed upon where it was approved within the approved site plan, special permits for that building. Looking at that oak tree, I think it's a pin oak. That pin oak, when I was over there, I inspected it. It is actually on the property line. It's on the corner, and it is actually, so it is on, whose property is on? It's on, I would say, all three properties. There's a share, it's a fairly large tree. I would probably say it's about 24 inches at breast diameter height. I haven't mentioned it, but it's a significant tree. I've been working with the owner to make sure that, you know, that tree is protected, that it is, it's, obviously it is close to the building. However, I have been over there and I've made sure that there's minimal damage done to that tree, into the root system when they were pouring the foundation, and they backfilled fairly quickly, so the roots were not exposed for a long period of time. The tree, the base of the tree is on the bank property. It's also on the developer's property. When I read the decision of this board, the number one goal of that decision was that, for that tree not to be removed and for the developer to have minimal impact upon that tree. And I can state that that is what we are working towards, is to keep that tree healthy, so it does survive, and that it continues to survive in the downtown area as a significant tree. And we take,
Never showed up on the plans.
I understand your, excuse me, I understand your comments, your concerns. We can go back, we did not have a conversation before this meeting. I would have pulled out the plans and we could have gone over it. And I could have brought the plans for the board to look at tonight, and I can do that at the next meeting. I do need a heads up upon, that to pull the plans out, prior to, but
You weren't here.
I
was at a class, and I'm sorry, because I've been in a class all week myself, I'm doing a certification, so I think my biggest concern is my frustration with this process, and we have no trees downtown, and we're killing them. That thing, because it's so close now, might actually kill that tree, because it's in the critical root zone.
I agree. I understand. And I understand the frustration of you. And I, however, reading the planning board's decision from that project, I understand the not the cautious element, but the way that decision was drafted. I understand that the planning board had real concerns about the health of that tree.
Right, but it says, in this decision in here, because I read it and I've marked it up, because it talks about all the concerns, but they don't actually get followed by saying, thou shalt not, thou shalt do X, Y, Z, thou shalt not do A, B, C, and I think we fall all over ourselves to be really, really nice, because we understand that people are coming into town to do business, but on the other side of the coin, we need to be a lot more, very specific in some of our decisions.
So to drive what you're saying more specificity, because from my perspective as a person who was part of that discussion and that process, like, I thought we were as thoughtful as we could reasonably be with regard to that tree. It was highly important. It was highly important to me that that tree be protected. So if you were saying that you think there's additional asks as part of the decision that could have better protected the tree, like, I'm open to hear what those ideas and thoughts are, and like, we're all interested in trees downtown, I think. So,
That's what I'm saying. We
yeah,
need to have.
so give us specifics. Tell us
So
what,
the specific
give us
is, if we have neighboring trees within 10 feet of a boundary, they need to be shown, and they need to be shown by what caliber they are, because I know how big that tree is around up above, and had I realized that building was gonna be that close to the property line,
Okay.
it wasn't shown on the property line, it didn't even show up. And in
So we
this
shouldn't be
picture-
satisfied with drawings like this.
In
Should
this
have more
picture,
trees in
in
there.
this rendering, we commented on those in design review, by the way. In this picture, he shows the tree,
Yep.
and the tree looks like it's a good 10 or 20 feet away.
Right.
Then you start looking at other ones, and in some cases, the building is in a slightly different place, because these are not accurate.
they are renderings, that's right. Yes, correct.
And they're not, and we don't even have it on a site plan. That thing never shows up on a site plan that says it's on their property. So if they had actually done their proper site plan review, that tree should have shown up on the property as Peter says it is, because the building's either in the right place on the property, or they've moved the building over.
Or they move the tree.
Probably not.
So need existing trees of significant caliber on site plans as part of our
Google
review.
Earth
Yeah.
shot of it with
And
the
then
floor plan,
He's not allowed to cut down the neighbor's property, whether the bank cares, the trees, whether the bank cares about it or not, because that was part of what people looked at also. I mean, we
Yeah.
knew.
I'm not familiar with what you're talking about now, but okay.
It's an evergreen, it's a cedar, and it was a 3-trunk cedar. And I didn't have time to get over there tonight before it was dark, because my printer was arguing with me, and I was trying to print these out, to measure the caliber, because then you'd have some idea of how big it was, but it was significant enough that it sort of took away from the building, so.
it's on,
Okay.
it's not on their property?
No, I don't think it is.
They were on the property
I think
line.
they're right out.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Lost my phone, 'cause I have it.
Figure out if it actually
Yeah,
is. or
we
not.
didn't, I don't remember dealing with the cedar.
If we had trees like that,
I think
some
you're
other.
Yeah,
Well,
you're in the
I
right,
think
your
it
heart's in the
We
right
need to
place.
start,
I
we
get
need
it.
to start thinking about this for everything, and I know that our zoning laws are less than desirable for
smarter about it, and figure out how we can get people to do this. Because if they can't figure out how to make a project economically viable, but it's gonna make our downtown look ugly, that doesn't work out for us. And I don't think this is helping make our downtown viable. I think it's not, it's making it look like you can do whatever you want downtown Ashland. So,
I mean, that was a 1-year approval process. That was, I mean, that took a full 12 months.
but he also is another one who's got the same issues that we all were noticing. Tricia was very specific about it, and she's right on about drawings and unfamiliar with programs, things like that. He's a new developer. And I don't
Again,
find-
I actually think when we think about the internal design of that building and the level of plans that we had, I think it's actually a good example of what this should be. I think it's like that, what 28 Wayne was, from an internal plan perspective, was aspirational from where we are on this. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
just
let's
really
move on
concerned
this.
about it. And I talked to you about the wall, so
Thank you.
if you could go check it, that'd be great.
Yep.
Thank you.
We are planning on moving on to a untelevised informal working session before we completely adjourn. We're going to be talking about.
You just wanna say.
Yeah, I will, but I want to just let people at home know the agenda. We're going to be talking about amendments to the definitions in the zoning, non-conforming small parcel, especially looking at the North Pond Street residential area, commercial residential setbacks, tree bylaw, floor area ratio, and we'll also be looking at some minutes. No need to do that on camera. And if there are any member reports or anything that people want to talk about before we say goodnight to people at home, I don't see anything. So at this time, we'll say goodnight to those of you at home, and we will move into a more informal session and go over some of this working stuff.